Welcome to episode 3 of A Humanistic Perspective. I am one of your 3 hosts, Chad Castilla here. I'm joined with
Ethan Castillo
and
Lily.
And we are super happy to have a really special episode for you today. We are featuring one of our good friends and amazing chefs, Mario Palaggi. Here's a little background on him for him before we get into the episode here. The Palaggi family has been creating culinary masterpieces for over 90 years and spanning over 3 generations. The traditional roots of his Italian heritage shine through his mouth-watering dishes, which have a favorite in the Chicagoland area since before even Ethan, Lily, or I were born. Chef Mario has had the privilege of being featured in the Taste of Chicago and doing special cooking demonstrations and sharing his take on classic family-inspired recipes. As well as developing a strong career in Illinois, he has numerous opportunities of being featured as a head chef at kitchens around the world. Besides cooking, Mario has lived a life of many unique experiences, spending time traveling the world, playing the flute, and connecting with others. We're super happy to have him on the show and really privileged that he would join us for being our first full guest for an interview. Mario, if you want to say hi and introduce yourself here.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're going to enjoy our interview today, our discussion, and I'm sure it's going to be very informative, and you'll learn a little bit about me and a little bit about the food industry and a lot about what not to do if you're going to open a restaurant.
Very nice, very nice. So you guys always know we love to start every episode by trying out a coffee here. So our flavor of the day is we have a beautiful dark roast by the Hill Brothers, which is, I believe, a commercial manufacturer of beans. And this is their dark satin blend. On our first sips here, how's everyone feeling about it?
It's very good, very rich.
It is very rich. It's
Very
probably
nice.
the richest one that we've tasted.
Yeah.
Sponsored
so
by Statler Technologies. Thank you very much, Statler Technologies.
Yeah. He was the one who actually purchased this blend for today's episode. Yeah. So we're going to jump on in here with, I wanted to get a little background, Mario. Why don't you share for the people maybe a little bit of your upbringing and the history of your family?
All right. Well, it began before color TV, and our family is an Italian family that migrated from Italy in the 1800s in a small town up in the foothills of Calabria, which is way south, 7 hours south by train, by fast train, of Rome, and it was called the Zimbario. The town is a small hill town, and my grandfather and my grandmother and great-grandparents all migrated from there to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the 1800s. And they stayed there for a couple years, 2 or 3 years. They had a cousin that pretty much got them to come to the UP, as they call it, Upper Peninsula. And so they decided that there was another cousin in Chicago, so they would just leave the peninsula.
Wow.
And which at this point, there are several distant second and third cousins that still live there. But the Palaggis migrated to right around the what's called now the South Loop in Chicago at the 18th and Federal, 19th and Clark, 18th and Prairie. We own 2 of the old historic Prairie mansions in the 40s and 50s, which were Marshall Fields had lived on there. Chicago's South Loop was.
And how many of you was living in the house at the time?
There were 2 homes, two mansions, and there were probably myself. I lived somewhere else, but I had about 17 or 18 aunts and uncles on the Palaggi side. So we had in that area, the 2 buildings, there were probably 4 or 5 different families living on different floors, and then another family was living at 18th and Clark, another Palaggi who had married into an Irish family, English-Irish, called the Bentley family. They lived at 18th and Clark, and so Prairie Avenue is the historic area now. I mean, it was all mansions at one time, and Chicago, the South Loop, back in the heyday of the 1800s, was the wealthiest people. But we came in the 40s, 50s, 60s and the 70s is when we let the mansions go. We sold the mansions. My uncle Dan Palaggi, who was a major Chicagoland player, and sold it to Donnelly Press, the makers of the old Chicago yellow phone book for
Okay.
parking lots. And they
Wow.
knocked the mansions down, believe it or not. And to this day, the space is still open. And in the 90s, it was recognized as a Hillary Rodham Clinton Park, named after Bill Clinton's wife. And after a while, they changed that. And basically now it's a small park at 18th and Prairie, and they have a walkover there that goes directly to Soldiers Field. And so we were there. We owned groceries, taverns, meat markets, restaurants, and we also were involved in Chicago's politics. My Uncle Dan, my dad's first cousin, Fred Rohde, he was the first ward alderman. If you needed to build a skyscraper, you had to see Freddie and go, get his blessing, and then you could go build a skyscraper.
What do you remember about your childhood? What was it like growing up?
Growing up as a Palaggi was basically lots of cousins with 17, 18 aunts and uncles. We would have at least 25 little cousins all get together at the mansions on Sunday, and it was a
So this
pasta,
was a regular thing.
a pasta
dinner.
Sunday. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was all pasta.
It's kind of like how you see it in the mom movies.
Well, right. I mean, I guess, or in the Italian American or the old Italian, that we're very clannish.
Sure.
We stay within ourselves, and we eat heartily, and we take care of each other, and we take pride in cooking and presenting food to each other. And so the things I remember is there'd be two seatings. The adults would eat first. They would probably have 40 or 50 adults eating pasta. And Grandmother Palaggi was really an outstanding cook.
Wow.
And that's the meatball that we have carried on, which probably originated in Calabria in the 1860s, 1840s, 1830s.
Me and Lily have had one of Mario's meatballs.
It's incredible.
They're insane. They're to die for. They're so tender, very juicy, and it complements any pasta just so well.
Right, and so on Sundays, what would go on, the adults would eat, and while the adults were eating, Uncle Dan Palaggi, who was kind of like the godfather of the Palaggis, and he was my personal godfather, he would show 16 millimeter Bugs Bunny cartoons and, the Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
We had a 16 millimeter projector going.
How did he get his hands on one of those?
Well, when you're in the south side of Chicago and you pretty much, he owned a jukebox company,
Okay, cool.
so he had all the equipment he ever needed. At one time, we had over 150,000 jukeboxes in the city of
It's
Chicago.
a sizable inventory at the time.
Yes, Uncle Dan Palaggi, a man named Freddie Morelli, and my father was not a partner, but my father, outside of being a restaurant broker, he was a jukebox technician. So his job he would spin the singles, change the 33s, change the 45s, collect the money, count the money, turn it in, and make repairs on the jukeboxes.
Okay.
So
you
that's
said he
what
was a
we did.
restaurant broker?
Yes,
Well-
he would buy restaurants,
Okay.
fix them up, and sell them.
Do you
And
think at a young age, like you guys were very heavily influenced by opening like businesses and such? Like was that a very much like something that was common in the Palaggi family?
Correct. We were entrepreneurs. The family, my father, my immediate aunts and uncles were all entrepreneurs. My father was he did some maintenance for a Greek restaurant owner. He cleaned the place, swept the place. The restaurant owner dies, and the Greek family thinks that they're going to get his restaurant. The Greek man gave my father, who was 16 or 17 at the time, his restaurant.
Holy cow.
And
So
16 years old. What year is this?
This has to be, let's see, Dad was born in 1904, so this had to be 1920, 21,
Could you
22.
imagine? And 1920, you're 16 years old, and all of a sudden, restaurants on your shoulders.
So, what would you say it takes to become an entrepreneur? What did it drive all of you to become one?
Well, basically, if you have not been brought up with the silver or the gold or diamond spoon in your mouth, you have to learn how to fend for yourself. You have to learn a trade. You have to learn how to make money. You have to learn how to make a living. You have to
create value with your hands.
create value. And back then, I mean, it was all you had was your body to make money, to learn a trade. And
Do you think at a young age you were more focused on making money rather than your passions, or do you think you were always focused on your passions? Or what?
well,
or how did you figure out your passions? I guess would be the first question, and then going. From there.
my early life was all about bubble gum, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Twinkies, and
But it's costing you change to buy this
well,
stuff at that
and
time,
at
right?
5 and 6 we shoveled snow
Nice.
in the neighborhood, and we hustled, and we raked leaves, we cut grass, and there was no power mower. It was all a push mower, and so you'd rake leaves, and at 5 and 6 I was raking leaves, shoveling snow. At 7 I got a job working for, believe it or not, for the Rock Island Lines at 91st and Longwood. I swept the train station every day after all the commuters came and went. And I was given 50 cents a week every Saturday. So the lady took total, child labor laws.
We're very different at the time.
There was no child labor law. At least, in the neighborhood.
Did you like doing it, or were you in your mind where you're like, I just got to do this?
Oh, no. It was great. I mean, all the Palaggis are zealous about work. My brother Joe, my older brother Joe, just retired 42 years in Central Steel and Wire and Allstate Insurance. My other brother John retired 40 years in steel work and steel plants. My brother Sam is still working. He's a semi-repairman in Kankakee, Illinois. I'm still somewhat working, although I've really gotten more semi-retired in the last year because of COVID closing our place in Evergreen Park, where I was the head chef and banquet chef at the Red Palm in Evergreen Park, and that is no more. And because we were a banquet hall, you can't have banquets anymore. You cannot have gatherings more than 6 or 8. So
it's devastating for business, really.
well, it has devastated, and by the time they feel this vaccine might help and might make everything like it used to be, which it will never really be like it used to be.
Sure.
There will be probably 4,000 or 5,000 restaurants in Chicago that will have closed. And
Wow. I'm seeing it all over the U.S. right now, really.
well,
In LA
worldwide,
as well.
worldwide.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's really not fair with some of the things that they're closing, just because you can see in LA that there's bigger companies that are open, and then the smaller businesses are
Yeah, I don't know
not
if you saw,
open.
there was a lady out in L.A., and she had a restaurant, and she's had it there for like 50 plus years, and they told her she couldn't serve outside to customers, but then right next to her, a Hollywood studio had set up a whole catering setup for their film crew. But then her restaurant, their patio, was right next to it, about 10 feet away, and she was told by the government she couldn't be open for her restaurant, and so then she had to close down. And it's just sad. We're seeing it right now all over the U.S. Really, I think a lot of it too is, I think you guys talked about our profit margins are pretty tight in the restaurant industry. Could you talk a little bit maybe about that, or from your perspective as a chef?
Right. I've been a chef, owner, operator, probably 4 or 5 different times. I've owned my own businesses, started them, built them. I've built 2 restaurants, big restaurants, and one in downtown Chicago, one in the South Loop around McCormick Place. I've built them from scratch, where I've done the drywalling. I've designed the restaurant. I've done all the schematics of the plumbing, the electrical, the lighting, the way the seating, the layout of the bar. I've gotten it. All I had to do was take it to an architect, and give them $5,000 and they put a stamp on my drawing.
Nice.
So I've done a lot of, from ground up. I've made many, many restaurants.
Yeah,
and
bootstrapping the entire experience.
Right. Because when you don't have a lot of money, like big franchise companies, you don't have a lot of money. And when you don't have a lot of money, it's very difficult. You have to build what you can. You have to make do with what you know and organize and design and make it work.
And there's a huge risk with that, but you're willing to, as an entrepreneur, right? You're willing to take that risk.
Well,
and that's just assumed with anything.
Correct. I mean, it's a crazy risk. The restaurant business, before COVID, I mean, most restaurants, 30% of all restaurants that would open on day one, within 3 years, they have been closed.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want to get back on the timeline here. So you're growing up, you're younger. Now let's go closer to high school, college. Are you leaving Chicago? Are you staying in the area? Are you still sweeping at night? What's going on?
Well,
Where are you
I
going?
mean, I got really involved in cooking for large groups. I worked my way through high school, and I worked in the St. Rita High School cafeteria, the Mustang Spa, and I was in charge of making the Italian beef sandwiches and the Italian sausage sandwiches. My younger brother, John, we both ran the cafeteria. He did the pizzas and the french fries, and we did this morbid-looking thing called a hamburger. And but that's how, that was my mass production, my entrance into mass producing for outside of the family and 8 or 10 or
Were you
whatever.
compensated at the time for that?
Well, it paid all my tuition, gave me my
And
high
this is
school
at
rank.
college? How old are you?
No, high school. This
High
is
school.
high school.
Got it.
I'm now 16 years old, 17, but my original recipe, I was a fried bologna chef. At probably 8 or 9 years old, I made all the fried bologna sandwiches for the family. I had
But
4
they were
brothers.
probably good.
Oh, they were outrageous. I mean, when your fried bologna is done,
What's the secret for fried bologna?
high heat butter, and you got to let it, the meat bubble up like a sombrero and brown around the edges. And then it's got to be soaked in butter, and you put it on white bread with mayonnaise.
See, you heard it here, exclusive. That's the way to do it.
I guess going through that, like at that time, going through high school, if you look at kids in that day and age, in that time period, comparative to now, do you see nowadays kids are less influenced to go out and maybe do an aspiration such as this? Do you think, or even when you said like you were doing for me, like you said, you were going out cutting lawns and doing all that kind of stuff, and maybe that was more of a common thing back then. And when you look at nowadays, not many kids are doing anything at that young of an age. Do you think over
Do you
the
think
years?
you see a difference in the hustle culture?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's a big difference in my generations before me and the now generations, and it's called the now generation. They're afraid of the word labor. They're afraid of the actual work. I mean, everything has progressed where my parents wanted to give me the best they could. The parents, now myself, which I'm not a parent, but I would give my child the best I could. But in return, what you're doing is you're taking away the opportunity for children to learn the college of hard knocks, learn how to toil, learn how to work. And that's why parents that consistently insist that kids have chores, that's the best way to be a parent.
To instill some.
Well, right, because
work.
you're helping them rather than hindering them. As much as they complain and squabble and cry and, scream about it and resist it, in the long run, once they're growing, they have habits that will help them be individuals, will help them cooperate with a family. When they create a family, they'll know how to create a family. And
I would agree. Yeah, no, I think that was perfectly said there. But I think even nowadays, I think it's so hard just to be a parent. A lot of parents can't even parent due to, kids, when you see them nowadays, even if you tell them one thing to do, and then you scream at them, that's considered abuse now. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like the level of like, and that just changed over the years. So it's cool to see, but I think it is very important to instill those values at such a young
Right.
age.
And the discipline that has been lacking now wasn't lacking when I was a child and we were reprimanded. Sitting in the corner, you never sat in a corner. Yeah. You might go to your room, but that was very rare. You usually had to do something seriously difficult to make up for whatever wrongdoing you did, and you were reprimanded. I mean, sure, I was part of the generation where it was okay to smack your kid, and I was a kid and I got smacked.
Right.
In the high schools, the Catholic religion, they used to love.
I've heard so many stories. My grandma as well. She would say her teachers would discipline her with rulers.
She actually broke a wooden spoon on my cousin's butt.
I remember just the nun at my religion school, the Catholic religion school. She would beat some of the kids there, even just when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, I mean it was allowed then, and so go back to the hippie land era when
I want to get into that part.
Well, Dr. Spock came on, and this is where discipline divided and turned into abuse versus discipline of your children, and all of a sudden they said no, that
What time period is this?
This got to be the 70s,
Okay.
early 70s,
Yeah,
where
that makes sense.
now you're abusing your child, you're scarring
So it
your
was
child.
marketing and propaganda.
That's when
media
the
and
different
attention
songs
sort of
came
shifted.
out with the teachers. I can't remember the names of them right now. I just remember my dad would play them all the time.
No kidding, I didn't know that
School's out
happened.
forever.
Oh yeah,
That song.
yeah, that was what's his name?
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Right.
Yeah.
School's out for the summer.
Wasn't that song about or no, it was Pink Floyd, wasn't it? That sang about the abuse of teachers and students. It was one of those bands.
Yeah, well,
Do you know what I'm talking
there
about?
was, I mean, everyone my age and my generation, we walked a very straightforward line, and as soon as you got out, you got knocked back into the line by physical force. It was considered like what people do with football
So it
players
was
now.
really hard to be different because everyone wanted you to be a certain way, would you say?
Yeah, they controlled you to the utmost, and to a point where they did hurt you. They did make marks on your body.
So
They
were you a rebel in high school, or did you follow your parents? Were you a good boy? Were you getting the best grades? What was your, I guess, persona or character like?
All I wanted to do was play basketball, football, and baseball, and hang out with the boys and the girls. And the rest is I got through high school. I did okay. I wasn't a genius, outside of geometry and earth science and all that stuff. I mean, but basically we lived for sports.
Yeah.
That was it.
So then, all right, high school's over. Did you go on to college? Did you get
Went
out of
on-
the house? What was
Correct,
next?
correct. What went on is I was brought up in a period where the Vietnam War was the draft of the young American children and teenagers. As soon as you turned 18, you were drafted to go to Vietnam.
Were you drafted?
No, I had a friend of mine after high school. He told me, Mario, you need to go to the city college. Go sign up. So he was like a mentor in my life. He was a geographer, and his wife was a German teacher, and she was from Germany, of course, and he was a Chicago guy. But he said, here, you're going to get, if you don't enroll right now in September, you're going to get drafted, and you're going to go to Vietnam, and it's not a good scene right now.
Yeah.
America
Were
is...
you opposed to the Vietnam War? Because I know at times, it was a highly politicized thing. There were two sides of it. Where were you at your age? Like, what were your thoughts on it?
I was not for the Vietnam War. So what I did is Bernie said here, he actually gave me the city colleges then, it was $5 a class hour to enroll.
Nice.
So he gave me
Wow.
$40. So I went to.
That's a lot back then.
Well,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I went to the junior college, which is now called Mayor Daley Junior
That's
College
awesome.
on the
He
south
really
side.
blessed you with like pretty much
Right,
gave you a
right.
scholarship. He
Well,
helped you out.
basically, you know, because of it was a very intense time, the '60s. Growing up in Chicago in the '60s, you know, if you didn't have a diamond spoon in your mouth, and if you weren't hidden away from reality, you were faced with racial wars. The whole city was up in war. Martin Luther King was killed. The West Side riots. The city burned down.
Holy cow.
The whole martial law.
So do you think
Like-
living through COVID and the pandemic is harder than the adversity you faced at that time, or do you think the people of that time faced way worse than they're facing now?
Well, we're just strictly, this is a medical thing.
Yeah.
It's not so much a sociological thing.
Sure,
This is a medical thing that, like, when I was a kid, 4 or 5 years old, I was around when polio was around. So we got vaccinated. Say yes to vaccination, who's ever listening. Get vaccinated, because if you look back on all the great plagues and all of the great diseases, the only reason we've ever gotten to 2021 is because of medical science creating something that will save our butts from dying
Like
off.
a path.
Yes, and a vaccine. Okay, so but it's way different. Back then, it was more of a sociological. I mean, the city was going through lots of change. Mankind was going through lots of change. It went from a rigid mother and father govern their children with a strap and a belt, and all of a sudden these flower children were running around and not wanting to go to war, not wanting to get drafted. And so the youth was starting to develop their own sense of reality, their own opinions, and it created a lot of hardships in families. It created a lot of hardships in us who wanted to see something different and make some kind of changes. It developed a lot of hardships everywhere.
Sure.
So luckily, we fared through it, and I believe some of my generation in the '60s have contributed a great deal to some of the good things that are still in existence in 2021.
He's sipping his coffee for anyone listening.
And so now it's a different kind of thing, but we're still faced with the adversities. There's still racism all over the place, and you know it's crawling back out of the woodwork. I was around when blacks, whites, Latinos, Puerto Ricans in the late '60s, everyone got along. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
There was a program
And
called.
how did they get to that point where everyone got along? Was there things that were like, or yeah, like
From your perspective, because we can hear it from a textbook, but like on
Sure.
the streets or like living in your life, how did you see the change happen?
The hippie had a major part of trying
Would
to
you have
bring
considered yourself
music.
a hippie at the time?
I was
I think I've seen the photo you've showed me where you had long hair. You
well.
were
I
in
had
Florida.
I had a long hair and long beard, but
are you the definition
also
of
not
No,
really. No, I wasn't.
a hippie? No.
Out demonstrating, and
Okay.
I was just enjoying the life and the travel, and But I also want to say that my early education was in fine arts, in
Okay.
painting,
So
drawing.
that's what you went to that community college for?
Yes, when I went there, I took, believe it or not, I went there and it was very late in the registrar's office, and they said, "We don't have any more classes for you." I said, "Wait a minute, you got to have classes." And they said, "No, we have no classes." I said, "What do you have?" They said, "Well, we have pottery, we have life drawing, we have ceramics, we have oil painting,
Well, you have a whole art
we
degree
have
right there.
watercolor, we have cinematography, We have, and I said, okay, I'll take them. So
So
that's,
were you not planning on doing art classes at that time?
oh, no.
Well, you
no,
just
no,
didn't want to
no.
go to Vietnam. You didn't want to
Right.
get drafted.
Right. I mean, already 15 of my very close friends came back dead from Vietnam.
Wow.
We had funerals at one period. 1 year we had funerals every couple weeks.
That changes you. See, when my grandma died, my life and my perspective really changed and divulged, and it grew me up a lot. But I can't imagine being at your age and seeing 15 of your friends.
Well, yeah, I had a
dying around.
patient I drove. His name was Gary, and he was in Vietnam War. He just passed away a few years ago, actually, like last year, he was one of our patients we were transporting. But I mean, he would just tell me the countless times he was almost shot at and lucky. I mean, he was shot and wounded, and he was more than lucky to get out of that kind of stuff. He
Well,
said,
for those that survived, they were very, very lucky, and they were confronted with odds that were against everything they were ever taught to deal with. To go to Vietnam, I've traveled around the world and back. I've been to Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore. But when I was in Thailand,
I want to get into this.
if you go north in Thailand, you go up into the Chiang Mai area where the elephant rides are, where all the tourists, that's what they want. But when I was there, you didn't go up to the northern, because the further north you go, the closer to Vietnam. And there was still insurgencies going on. There was still prisoner of wars. But what I'm saying is that Vietnam was totally abnormal for the everyday American young fellow, young woman. It was a tropical thicket, a tropical jungle filled with thorns, filled with every kind of
I mean, the bugs could kill you
the
there.
bugs, the snakes, the reptiles, the malaria,
That sounds terrifying.
outside of the fact that the enemy was after you
right.
and they were hiding everywhere.
Yeah,
So,
they knew guerrilla warfare. They had different
well,
style of fighting.
that's, and France had occupied Vietnam, and they said to America, don't go.
Yeah.
And 30 years later, McNamara, he was the Secretary of Defense about 8 years ago, he came out and said that Vietnam was one of the worst mistakes America ever created. And, like all wars, I mean, of the modern day, there could be more thought about before you go and invade a country or occupy a country. We had to fight in the First World War. Mm-hmm. We had to fight in the Second World War. America was faced with odds were against us, and the world was being taken over by some gruesome dictators.
Oh, yeah.
In the First World War, Second World War. The Civil War is another story. I mean, did we need to do that? I mean, it's still going on.
Yeah.
Do you think
we're
you
seeing
were-
a new facet of it?
Yeah, you were mentioning all those places you visited. I mean, for our listeners or for even us personally, if there's one
How
place
did
you
you
could
get there? When did you leave? So, like, you're at this community college. Did you hit the road then? You said you were a hippie. Like, how did you
Okay,
get on
so
the road?
Yeah, okay,
what
yeah.
I would do every summer in between semesters,
Okay.
I would go and pick a mountain range in America
Is this when you make the stew?
And-
Could you share that story, please?
and backpack throughout America. We would go
Sure.
and we'd get on the road. We'd get our pickup trucks. I had a 67 Chevy pickup that I built a kind of a house on the back on top of the canopy that was already there. So my first exposure was going to Colorado.
Okay.
So my first probably 18, 19, 20, 21 every summer was spent up in the mountains in Colorado, outside of Boulder, up in the glacier lakes, backpacking,
Pretty.
painting with oils.
So what were you
playing
doing
music.
to make money while you were there?
Well, I would always make money before.
And then save up for it.
Correct. I mean, this was summer vacation.
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
So that's how I basically.
Are
and then,
you grateful? Now you're saying you were doing paintings and stuff like that. Are you grateful for doing those classes that you did back in your high school or the college?
well, outside of it, I got a 2S status with the selective service with the draft. 2S meant school, S for school.
Got it.
So you are in school and you cannot be drafted into this military. Okay, so, and I was part of the original, they called it a lottery, where your number, your birth date, paralleled a number, and they took the first 100 and 220
Wow.
from 1 to 365, and I was 115, so I was going to go and get drafted. I went down for my physical at the selective service, where they do all the, they said I was approved to be in the armed forces, and that's when I got definitely into school, and that helped, yes, the art world seriously carved my life out for me, learning the arts, learning the fundamentals of all of these different trades and skills and classes, and it helps to develop, because when you're in high school, unless you've been in shop, you're like a big kid. You don't know anything. You don't know how to use any tools. You don't know, and that's why when I was brought up, we had trade schools. Every high school had a trade department. My high school, St. Rita, had an airplane hangar. They taught airplane mechanics.
That's really cool.
That's
awesome.
super cool.
They had an auto shop. They taught auto mechanics.
Do you think these types of programs need to be added back into high schools? Because we see some of it with IVIC, but not much.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's some programs around the U.S. for graduates and high school level students to get some of this, but trades have gone a lot to the wayside, marketing wise and attention wise, for the labor market in the U.S.
Correct. Well, what happened is suddenly it was a union fight, a fight with the union and the Chicago public school system. The union had their teachers in the school, okay, the trades.
Yeah.
The electrician, the teacher was a union electrician.
That's
The
awesome.
carpentry was a union carpenter. The schools didn't want the union in their schools. That's how the trade schools disappeared.
Pushed to the wayside.
And what became of the young people of America? They now were floundering from year to year. It turned from a 4-year program to a 6-year program to an 8-year college program to all of a sudden getting out of college with a degree that goes nowhere, and they're tending bar, they're driving cabs, they're washing dishes, they're chauffeuring after spending their parents' $250,000 on a degree to make them a professional, because of not everyone is cut out for that, but this is what happened when all the trades went to the side. And now, like you just said, that Lil felt that, she mentioned there are trades popping back up. It's becoming a trend now to reinstall
I think
lane
it's so
tech.
important.
Yeah, lane tech, and
Really?
we lost probably 30 years worth of young people in that period that just floundered because of they did not want to go to college.
They pushed college. Everyone thought college was like, oh, you're gonna immediately get a job. It was like an insurance policy. I feel like for some.
Well, at one
families.
point it did, but now it's flooded.
There's too much partying.
Right, and that all goes back to, the discipline. The grandmothers of all the children died off, and the grandkids ran wild.
Right.
So,
Wow. And they just get more free the younger they get.
well, right, but So back.
So Colorado is where we sort of left
Yeah,
off.
Colorado, that was basically my escape. That's where I realized land without concrete,
More coffee going.
land without skyscrapers, land without 2 and 3 million people on it. And it was fresh air. It was in the mountains,
Colorado's beautiful.
Colorado's
I haven't
beautiful.
had the chance to go yet, but my cousin lives out there and she goes skiing every weekend. Was that something that you would do?
No, I've never been a skier. No, I was basically a backpacker. I was into backpacking. I've been up and over every mountain range in the United States, and since I've been going backpacking, I've hit every mountain range, but only because I fell in love with the wide open spaces and what it does. Fresh air, mountains, scenery is it takes anything inside of you and wrings it out and gives you a fresh perspective on the world, on the life. Whatever.
I wanted to ask alongside this right now. What was your religious upbringing? And at this time, at those mountains or anything, were you meditating? Did you have any spiritual experiences or like what?
Well,
what
I mean, I was
that?
brought up an Italian American Catholic.
Sure.
I was brought up, believe it or not, when the Catholic Mass wasn't in English. It was all in Latin.
Wow.
So every day I went to church, you
were
could
hearing
sleep.
Latin.
You could sleep because you didn't understand Latin, so it was great. It has a nice little chanting kind of thing going. And,
Yeah. It's kind of like a lullaby.
Right, a lullaby. But I wasn't real deeply spiritual. I went through the Catholic religion. I did what they wanted me to do. We prayed. We learned all the prayers. But after high school, I pretty much, and after I hit the mountains and saw other things, I just started to become somewhat like a what would I call it? Just a admirer of the great creation, and believe in and see that the creation controls your life, our lives, the world's lives, not a religion, not an individual, because there's 500 religions that have 500 individuals that are supposed to be God Almighty, and just look at all the problems we have.
Right.
But Mother Nature, it has some problems. It'll kick your ass. It'll knock you off a mountain. It'll sweep you into the sea. But the majority of the times, you're at great peace, and it's an amazing community when you do step away from, your every day-to-day society. Why do people go on vacations in Laguna Beach? It's the same thing. It might be a short section for a short 2 weeks, but they go there, they lay there, they commune with the sun, they go to the ocean, and they're not anything like what they were when they go back to work.
Do you think people should, to create a more mindful and peaceful life, do you think people should move more?
People should travel more. Whether you move, it's like the Statler family here. They're a very spiritual family, all right? And they have their spiritual beliefs and their family. It's very strong base, and they live in a very beautiful place that just helps to calm. Being out here on this compound, the Statler compound,
It's so peaceful.
it's just peaceful. So people should pull away from their everyday dog-eat-dog life and occupation. America doesn't take vacations the way the other world does.
Yeah, we'll go somewhere on vacation, but I'll still have my phone on. I'll keep the ringer on.
Right. And America as a country, what do? We do 2 weeks. Europe does 3 months. Right. I mean, Australia, it's a holiday.
See, and that's where people, when they say they want to have these smaller careers, that's where even when I say setting yourself up financially smart gives you that opportunity and will to travel like that. And if you're not setting yourself up, you're not giving yourself that opportunity to explore the world. I mean, you're only here on this land for, one time.
Basically, you're right. I mean, the hereafter, I always say if everyone came back, it would be seriously overcrowded.
Yeah, truly. So Colorado, what's going on after that? Where's maybe the next big milestone?
Well, Colorado, come back to Chicago and leave the junior colleges. And I went to the American Academy of Fine Arts in downtown Chicago.
Nice.
and enrolled there as an art student and studied painting, drawing, sculpture, portrait work, a little bit of illustration. And then I decided I had to get out. And so I left. I went to New Mexico. A friend of mine, a Chicago family, a serious Chicago Irish family, the Kelly family. They were plumbers and sewer workers.
Cool.
One left the fold, David, and he went and bought 5 acres up in the mountains outside Albuquerque and in the Sandia Ridge. And, and he said to me, he says, Mario, why don't you come out and visit? And he really wanted me to come out and help dig his foundation by hand.
Yeah. Oh my God.
By hand. In
Big house.
pretty big foundation in desert clay and desert sand.
So was it easy to dig out? Or
Oh, it
no?
was horrible.
Well, yeah, it was probably hell.
Building homes still now in Mexico and stuff is quite similar. I don't think they have as much machinery as we do here,
Right.
correct?
And the elements there, the earth
New
is
Mexico's in the United States.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, he said New Mexico.
New
Oh,
Mexico,
okay, I guess,
Albuquerque.
Sorry.
It's in the Albuquerque area, but the desert floor is solid sand, clay. No matter what you're building, it still takes 200% more energy with your bulldozer or whatever. And basically, so I went to New Mexico, and I lived with David up in the. He built an A-frame. By the time we finished the foundation, he built a beautiful A-frame. We had a giant wind generator. It was an airplane prop. Went into about 12, big 12-volt batteries, and he ran that back into the house. And that's where he ran a stereo, ran the dishwasher, ran the clothes machine, ran all the lighting, ran the heat. But we had a fireplace, but at that point, I had already left the American Academy of Art, and I was at the University in New Mexico. I went over there, and I got a part-time job sitting for portraits.
Oh,
So
nice.
I would get $15 an hour. But my main job in Albuquerque at the time, I was a baker. I baked 125 pounds of bread a night. Without any machines.
What were your hours? What is the nighttime?
I went in at 9 p.m. and wrapped it up by 6 a.m. And then we had to deliver. We were what was called the co-ops. Back with the land of the hippies, we had co-ops. We had stores where, you could buy whole grains. Or, it was just a whole co-op was a different.
What were you making in the bakery? What was your specialty?
I made 4 different types of breads. I made a standard 2-pound white. Okay. I made a standard 1-pound French. I made a goodness bread, which was a fortified bread with sorghum, molasses, walnuts, raisins.
Were you a vegetarian at this time in your life yet?
I had already started to, at about 24 years old, 25 years old, I was pretty much a vegetarian full-time, right. I had cheese, but I just...
What made you,
at first.
like, switch?
In the beginning, back...
was it like hippies were doing it because they thought it was sustainable, or what?
In the beginning, hippies really didn't think of it as a healthy alternative as much as an emotional, sociological thing that they just didn't want. Middle Eastern influences came in. Sure. India influences came in. The Indians, they adorn the cows. They don't eat their cows. They get they're sacred, and just America was starting to change. Sure. Dramatically. There was the Middle East huge was coming in. Influence. Giant culture was coming in. Tai Chi, China was coming in. The Indian culture was coming in. Meditation was coming in.
So were you meeting people with all sorts of different cultural backgrounds through your travels?
I was meeting...
especially that co-op that you talked about.
Yeah, I met a ton of different types of people that we were all had certain things in common. We believed in good, healthy foods. We believed in doing things with heart healthy ingredients, even back then. I mean, that's really where, America has always had good food, but America also had and still does have some of the biggest junk food
Just fat.
population
That
in the
food
world.
pyramid, we kind of flip it upside down.
In the world. I mean,
I don't know if I would say this right, but was obesity a bigger thing back then, or people that were so unhealthy? Like, was that a common thing, even just growing up? Like, was there a lot more people that were a lot more active?
In the Italian family, I mean, my aunts all weighed out at 200 pounds, 220, 225, and
Okay.
but
Yeah.
it was normal. It was the peasants of Italy, the women in charge
they ate a lot of carbs.
well, they ate it, but they worked their butts off, and
So hard, I bet.
they worked, like they call it, worked your fingers to the bone, and I mean they did, and but back to the generation that was changing, and for some reason people started to think, well, slaughtering of the animal and killing of the animal and eating of the animal. There was a kind of a following that we didn't want to be part of that. And so I was part of that movement. But as time went on, I also kind of moved away from that. And I started to understand that healthy foods, the healthier they are, means they come from the sky, the trees, the gardens, the land, eat your vegetables, eat your produce, eat your fruits. In the Bible it says, eat from the trees, eat from the land. And, we've just, as a human race, we've strayed away. We've had the opportunity. Now people are getting back to it, maybe, 600,
It's
700,
difficult
800.
though when all of the soil there's only like an inch or two of topsoil left, and so we have to find a new way of agriculture and farming.
Correct. Right. I mean, good point, Lil. Since I've come out to the Yorkville area, I've worked at a few places. One place particular in Sugar Grove, I'm not going to mention it, but they were owned by farmers, and they told me, they said, Mario, there are hardly any more coyotes. There are hardly any more pheasant. And I said, well, why? Why is that? He said, because of the way they micromanage the crops. There's no open space for the animals to move around in anymore, or be, to roam. And
they've basically been caged out by crops.
It's the open range has been deranged here. And it was something interesting because, I was brought up a city kid, and but
What do you think of cities? Do you think going in the future, do you think it should maybe be more colonization, small communities,
or
and
do
little?
you think the big city will stay?
Yeah.
No, the big cities are here to stay. I mean, the big cities were created because of convenience.
And because of overpopulation, I feel like over time, if there's too many people born, there's not going to be enough land to fit everyone everywhere to have a small community to really have everything that small community would need to function.
Yeah, I get that. So I wanted to get back to your timeline here. You're at Colorado. You're doing the bakery.
So I'm in New Mexico.
He's in New Mexico, remember?
I'm doing the bakery, 70 hours a week, and working at the university maybe 15 hours a week. And then I would go to the it was the flea market every Saturday in Albuquerque, and I would draw portraits of people, charcoal portraits, and for a few bucks, stuff like that. And so that was my art. But then I happened to meet a girl at the flea market that wanted her portrait done, and she was vending cantaloupes.
Okay.
And it turns out that we became friends, and she lived in Albuquerque. And that started another journey that we ended up picking up from Albuquerque, and we moved to Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Nice.
Wow.
And so this is where I think I saw a news clipping of you actually from
Right.
Florida that you've shown me. Right.
Right.
So why did you move to Florida? What was the urge?
Well, the crazy part, it wasn't that I wanted to go to Florida so much. It was that my girlfriend at the time, her father was, you'll flip, he was the 4-star general, commander-in-chief of the United States Air Force. And he was stationed.
Her dad?
That was her dad, and he was stationed.
Were you scared to meet him?
and you're like, hey, I cook, I do art.
Oh yeah, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, right.
Hey, General, how you doing? I did meet him. I mean, but it turns out that how we ended up in Florida, unfortunately, my girlfriend's mother, the general's wife of several years, the general wanted a divorce. So he divorced his wife, my girlfriend's mother. We went to Colorado Springs, stayed on the base with the general for a month at Cheyenne Mountain, and that was another story. The guard at the sentry at the base of the Colorado Air Force Base asked my girlfriend, "Who is that?" when he looked at me, and she said, "That's my boyfriend." Because I was furry looking. I mean,
Sure.
kind of
longer hair at the time.
semi-swamp thing looking.
And you're at this like clean cut
Well,
military
now
base.
I'm on the the NORAD, the major defense base in the world. I mean, of America and the military. And
Were you cooking for guys there or anything?
no, I was a guest.
Yeah.
So I had 3 servants, I had maids, aides.
Wow.
My clothes were pressed every day.
You were there for a month, right?
For a month.
That sounds like a fun month.
Getting my girlfriend's mother's belongings all organized to move. And so I was with the general, and he led over 200 bombing raids in Vietnam.
Wow.
So we were worlds apart,
Yeah.
totally worlds apart in looking, thinking, but he liked me. I liked him. He always invited me to sit down at the dinner table with him and have a bottle of wine and talk about the world and talk about his experiences and, at the time, our war of Vietnam. And he said, "Mario, war is an evil necessity that I have been in and the world has been in forever and will probably forever be in." But he ran bombing raids in Vietnam. He went and dropped napalm. He went and dropped, So I was there with him for a
Impressive
month.
title. Wow.
I was there with him for a month, and I was taken. One day, the general says, "Mario, you want to come with me today?" I says, "General, where are we going?" He says, "Well, we're going to go into the Dugout Mountain, the Cheyenne Mountain, which is the NORAD. It's North American Air Defense Command installation. It's the base inside the mountain. There are
That's so cool.
There are 250 foot
insane.
long steel bolts, a bolt with a giant nut.
Yeah.
That's the size of this room. That's what keeps the
Wow.
mountain together when they.
So what's in there? What do they do in that?
Well, all right. So he asked me, he says, "We're going to go and we're going to have a briefing today." And so I'm dressed in my quite relaxed liberal clothing and looking like, someone from the Swamp Thing of sorts, somewhat of a hippie-like. And so the bus pulled up at the general's house, and there were 15 or 20 other Air Force generals, 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, but only 1 4-star. And I got on with the general, and these guys were like, one guy says, "Who are you?" Seriously.
It's like all these high profile people are like,
Right.
why is that? How you doing?
Right.
Exactly.
Who are you? And I said, "Well, I'm the general's daughter's boyfriend." And that was
That's your official ranking.
that was right there. Everything. We had a party. We had a good time. The bus was everybody was laughing, having fun going. But as you went winding through, and I probably shouldn't talk much about it as an installation. Right. I mean, it's super classified stuff. But we came to a briefing room and like a theater in the Dugout Mountain with about 20 or 30 theater seats.
Wow.
And there was a man giving a demonstration, and he basically, he had a pointer stick, and they had a screen, and they had a projector, and they were projecting on the screen a spaceship. And so I'm like, okay. And so they said that right now at our time we have more satellites in outer space than it's getting crowded out there in outer space. They told this was
What year is this?
This had to have been 70. Let's see, 76.
This was in the
77.
If this was in the
getting
70s.
crowded out there.
Yeah, and the thing is too is like it's often known that the military-industrial complex is about 30 to 40 years advanced in technology than the civilians are.
Well, and he was talking about things built into mountains in the 70s.
Right.
We're in 2021.
So I imagine
This
how
was
crowded
every
it is
bit of
now.
Star Wars. I mean, I can't really go in depth about what
so
I
they
saw.
just let you in there.
Well, I mean,
Did you have
no,
to sign any forms,
no,
NDAs or nothing?
No, I was with the
You
general.
were just the general's daughter, or daughter's
General's-
boyfriend, yeah.
Right. So, but here's what it was. The pointer, the man directing the discussion, the pointer was a spaceship. And like I had just said, that there were several satellites in outer space that are junk, that have burned out. This was the design for the
Retrieval?
space shuttle. This was the space shuttle program.
That would future to become.
This was the
to go to the
design.
moon.
This was, yes, but this was the space shuttle, the first space shuttle
For the US.
for the U.S.
And
And
was
they
that
built
NASA?
it. This is NASA,
Yeah.
but this
Yeah,
is
probably NASA ex-military. They're trying to
well,
still figure
Air
it out.
Force is.
Got
I
it.
mean, you're all, but this was the demonstration that they said that this was the ship that they were going to go out into outer space, open the cargoes, and bring in the satellites and bring them back
Wow.
to Earth.
So they're doing a retrieval mission briefing, pretty much.
Basically, that's what the space shuttle program was about. It was a garbage truck for burned out satellites
Wow.
in the beginning. So fast forward, I leave Cheyenne Mountain, move to Florida. The reason I moved to Florida is because my girlfriend's mother's other daughter lived in an Air Force base down in the east coast of Florida called Patrick Air Force Base. So the general got rid of his wife and put her on another Air Force base in Florida and gave her base housing, the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
And this is how my mission when I left Colorado Springs wasn't anything military, wasn't anything sci-fi. I carried a 10-foot box truck, U-Haul box truck, full of the most expensive booze that the general's wife had collected over 25 or 30 years. It was all liquor.
What'd you do with it?
And well, I had to get it down to the next Air Force base, way across.
So
the
were you by
mountains.
yourself doing this?
No, I mean the general's wife and my girlfriend were driving in their fancy limo, and I was the trucker. There were governors on trucks. You couldn't go faster than 55 miles an hour, so I was behind them, pulling all the liquor to the Air Force base, and that's how I got to Florida.
Huh. I wanted to ask real quick and go back there. So because you saw that spaceship stuff, did you ever ask the general or anything about aliens or anything like that?
Aliens, no, not much.
Do you think?
But
do you think after being there that could be possible?
Well, we'll talk about it, but here's where the spaceship idea went to. They built the space shuttle, and I was down there the year after I saw the diagram being drawn up. I saw the first 3 space shuttles take off from Cape Canaveral.
Because then they launched them in Florida, right?
Cape Canaveral.
You were following the track of the spaceships.
Well, that
Are
This
you
is
the
a
secret
cra-
CIA operative,
Yeah, I know,
Mario?
like, now I'm
unknowingly,
scared, like, maybe he was
unknowingly, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, the space shuttle. So I lived in Cape Canaveral in a small little apartment right off the beach on the ocean, on the Atlantic. And I'm like, oh my God, the space shuttle. That was the space shuttle I saw up in
Yeah.
the Colorado mountains in the
That
Cheyenne
must
Mountain.
have been wild.
And
What was-
so,
Wow.
but the
I've
first,
never heard this
the
one. This
first
is-
one was scrubbed. The first shot because of
Just
weather.
aerodynamics?
No,
or-
no. Weather governs the space shuttle shots.
Do you know about how much money they dumped into that?
Oh,
Would you say at the
millions,
time?
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and probably $1 billion if there was that much back then, you know. But so basically, that's when the shuttle took off with people on board, and you know that's.
Did it?
that's
And you said it failed.
no, it made it, but they held it up for 3 days because of weather. So picture this.
Okay.
You have all the presidents, you have all of Congress, you have all of America. Their eyes are watching Cape Canaveral for the shuttle shot. It's big stuff. Joint Chiefs of Staff, they're all down there. They're all thinking they're going there.
Was the general down there as well?
Generals down there, everyone's down there. They're all thinking they're just going down there, you know, get a night at the hotel, the shuttle shot, and bam, take off, everyone go.
Now it's
3 days. So now it's the biggest party.
Were you there for it?
I was there for it. It was the
Did
biggest.
you party with
So-
the
so you-
general?
It was. I wasn't hanging out with the general. I lived right on the beach. We were already. We had our community of our friends, and so yes, everyone in town, they triple parked all the highways, all of A1A, which is the main artery from Miami to all the way north, was shut down.
Holy cow.
With-
Like Woodstock.
Yeah,
similar.
just shut it down because of diplomats and reporters. And 3 days later, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 days later, and it went, when the shuttle shot, it was the most unbelievable thing
Did you
to.
see it with
I
your
saw
eyes?
it, yeah, because I'm right on the
You're right
beach,
where it's happening,
and
yeah.
I'm only probably 6 miles from the actual
Oh my gosh.
pod
Did
where
you
it's
tell the
taken.
people you were with, hey, I think I saw the dimensions for that in Colorado?
Well, I mean, I had, so I saw this space shuttle take off, and it shook your flesh on your face. It shook the air. The molecular structure of the oxygen vibrated. It moved through space. You could see the air separating as it took off, and everything was just the
That's so
sound
cool.
was unbelievable. But the most amazing part of a shuttle shot is seeing it a night shot. That is, then you really, really, everything turns bright copper, gold,
That's cool.
like gold. Your faces, all the people on the beach, everyone's sitting on the beach in gold, shaking, and so.
That's a wild
But
part.
that's basically how I got to Florida.
Sure.
But
what
during
were you
the
doing for a living in Florida?
Well, this is what it's leading into. So the general's daughter and the general's wife, they have to go back to Colorado Springs to
Wow.
finalize the divorce.
Okay.
So they said, Mario, we'll be back. Don't do anything drastic. So while they were gone, I opened an art school. I opened up the Cocoa Beach Academy of Fine Art,
That sounds awesome.
located on Brevard
Wow.
Avenue in Cocoa Beach, and I was the art director. And I had, by the time I had that
Were you
small,
playing flute at this point?
well, I've always been a musician since
Okay.
I've been
You did that back in Chicago when you were
17,
young.
17, 18
Yeah,
years
so
old.
back when you were starting that community college stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Irish people, the Kellys from New Mexico, they gave me an Irish fife, a
What is
tin
that?
whistle.
It's like a little tin
A
whistle.
tin little whistle recorder, and that's basically how my woodwind. And we go to the woods at night, play the congas, play the bongos, play the flute, drink cheap wine, and celebrate the full moon. We'd have full moon dances. But back to Cocoa Beach. So they said, don't do anything drastic. I go in, I said, I got to make a living. I had come from a great art school. I had a lot of knowledge. I knew how to teach. I know how to paint, know how to draw. So I organized a school where I was the teacher, the instructor. It was in a small little shopping mall, a strip mall in Cocoa Beach, Florida. And so I was there for complete total about 7 years in Florida. But after 3 years, I was growing out of the small little mall. And so I had probably 2,500 students to 3,000 students that I had taught in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Holy cow.
And so
How many years did you keep that open?
I was complete about 7 years in Florida with the Cocoa Beach Academy
That's
of Fine
awesome.
Art.
And did the general ever come back with his daughter?
No, the daughter came back, the mother came back. They were pissed off that I went and opened this business, but I had to do my life.
Yeah, you gotta live it.
So she lived on the Air Force Base, the general's wife, at Patrick Air Force Base, where another vehicle I saw unveiled, the stealth bomber.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first
It's,
time.
B whatever.
What's the stealth bomber?
It's the black one, right? That looks like a falcon almost.
It looks like a giant garbage fly.
Yeah.
It's got the
It's the
wingspan.
B-2 stealth bomber.
Yeah, and that was first unveiled in probably the early 80s.
Wow.
Yeah, you see that.
Yeah.
And that was parked at the Air Force Base down in Patrick. It was a mysterious,
Wow.
but it
Yeah.
would come flying off the ocean and
It's
land.
loud and
oh,
fast.
I mean, this sonic booms the whole 9 yards. But
Top speed is 628 miles per hour. Okay, yeah. No, please, definitely go ahead. So I wanted to mention here real quick, Dufresne might show up in the midst of this podcast here. Mario wanted to go step away here for a second, so we're just going to take over here, and then we'll bring him right back in. How you guys feeling about this so far?
Good. No, it's crazy. I mean, one of the biggest things that I'm taking away from it is
Yeah.
realizing that, we're just talking through this, but back in the 70s,
Right.
there was, and again, he doesn't want to go into deep detail about that stuff because I get the confidentiality, but I mean, we're in 2021. You know how far along an advanced technology is. Like, there's so much we don't know.
A thought that popped up while he was talking about it is actually that I'm hoping that wars stop on the earth between different countries and they start going outside into the universe and they just start conquering planets.
I think that's
way.
hundreds of years down the road, but
Yes, I agree.
I don't think we'll see it in our lifetime, unfortunately.
That's another thing I thought of too, but I just thought that would be an interesting
But
dynamic.
who knows? Anti-aging medicine. I actually did a thing last night. It was a calculate when you will die. There's an actual testing.
Interesting.
There's a whole site and you can calculate when you'll pass away.
When did it say you would?
And it was you had to do your BMI and all that kind of stuff. It was based on your weight and your height, yada yada. But it said I would die in what was it 20? I think it was 2070. Well, the first one because I did it wrong. It was like
He's saying that he did some calculator thing that told him when he would
oh
die.
here it is. Friday, May 26, 2102.
2102. That's a pretty bit of ways away.
Yeah,
from
Friday, May 26, 2102. And it's very much dependent on your weight and your height at the time and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if it's accurate, but I was just reading it in one of my Bible things, and it was a guy that was doing a sermon, and it was a way of calculating that. And really what the meaning of that was to stop focusing on your little moments, focus on that counter, that clock going down, and appreciating all the
sort of
little
help motivate you to
Yeah.
work harder. Cool, that's interesting. So Mario, we left off 7 years art school. You're in Florida.
Did you leave
Cocoa
Florida
Beach,
by this
Florida.
time?
All right, so I'm still in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and I took a break. The girl I was dating, the general's daughter, decided she wanted to go to Hawaii. So, the old romance. Romance ruins every great vacation. But
Would you say getting into romance at a young age is a good idea, or
no,
do you,
it's a great idea.
Okay.
It's a great idea because you're going to learn the real lessons of life and relationship and people. And, you know, I mean, you have to know what people are about as young, because you're going to grow up and you're going to be one of the ones that, you know, the adults are going to evolve into an adult, and have to know, you know, who you like, what you like, how you like, the whole 9 yards. So I'm still in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and she wants to go to Hawaii to just go visit or go see Hawaii. One of her friends moved out there, and so she left. We went our separate ways. So I'm running my art school in Florida, and I decide, hey, I'm going to go to Hawaii. So I told everybody, you know.
What year is this that you're going to Hawaii?
This got to be, let's see, I went to Hawaii in probably 82.
Okay. We're getting closer to 2000s.
What were the
here.
planes back? Okay, well, that was in the 80s.
Yeah.
So how far along have commercial airliners come along since then? Was that like
Well, I mean, the 80s, I mean, there have been some massive airplanes built in the 80s. I mean,
okay, yeah, maybe.
you know, I mean, I was on
Were you a warm beach or a cold weather guy? Because you had gone to some cold weather places. You grew up in a cold weather place, but were
Right.
you fond of the beaches now?
No,
or-
I'm totally, to this day, I love the ocean. I love the sun.
It
The
feels like
desert,
home.
the desert's okay, but there's no water, and you got to have water.
Do you
I
see
mean,
yourself in the future going, other than currently you're in Illinois, do you see yourself
Like
ever retiring somewhere else, or you think this is your...
Actually, we have talked about, there's a lot of different deals going on in Italy, in southern Italy, or just in Italy.
For cheap
where-
places to renovate on.
Well, you can buy a house for $2,000. You can buy a house for $10, but you have to promise and sign a note with the Italian government. And whether or not this ever goes on,
Sure.
but this is like for people your age and, you know, who can get a lead on life and, you know, do stuff at an early age, all the great things that has taken me, you know, decades and decades to do. And Italy, as long as you invest $30,000 into the property, within 3 years, they give you the land.
Wow.
And
Wow.
if you look, Sicily,
I'm going to have to look into that.
Calabria, I mean, all kinds of
All over the
places.
place.
So, I mean, we've tossed the idea around about Italy, but how I compensate for not living on the beach, living on the ocean. I'm in my youth, I was an avid swimmer. I used to dive off cliffs. I used to deep dive with just the mask on and fins in Hawaii and stuff like that. And so, but I left Cocoa Beach, went to Hawaii, and I saw my friend, and I toured the island. And while I was touring the island, I was on the remote side, which is called the Kalapana Coast. It's where the black sand beaches are mostly,
So pretty.
and it's the active volcano. I saw the active volcano. I saw the lava
Did you see it
fields.
erupt?
I've seen it erupt several times.
How many years were you living in Hawaii?
Well, so I go to Hawaii,
All right.
see my friend. I go around the island. Hawaii is the biggest of the islands. Hawaii Island, not Honolulu, not Maui, not Kauai. There's a place called Hawaii. That's the big island. But it's 300 miles around. Wow. So it's the highest mountain tip in the world. If they consider it's a volcano mountain, and it goes from the floor of the sea, it's some 38,000 feet, 40,000 feet to the tip. There's an observatory there. They have a giant telescope there. They have all kinds of scientific
Yeah,
stuff.
I think I've heard about it. They do a lot of like astrology work there.
Correct.
Because you can see the skies.
That's the
really
big
clearly.
island. And so, but I'm going around the island. I see this sign. It says Kalani Hanua, and it's don't know what that means.
Sure.
But retreat, holistic retreat. So
That
I'm
sounds
thinking,
right up my alley.
I'm like, whoa. So I go in, and it's 20 acres of a resort. It's a cultural resort. 20 acres of people.
I wonder if it still exists.
It's 3 years ago, it had a difficult time. The lava came through and pretty much demolished a lot of the roads. And so it's sketchy now. But so I go up there. They have an art department. They have an outdoor kitchen. They sleep 125 people a night. And I meet the director. And, I introduce myself. I says, hi, I'm Mario Palaggi. I'm the art director of the Cocoa Beach Academy of Fine Art, Cocoa Beach, Florida. And he says, hi, I'm Richard Koob. I'm the director of Kalani Hanua, cultural event. And so they put on language institutes. They put on dance festivals. So he gave me his card. 2 weeks in Hawaii, go back to Cocoa Beach, Florida. Keep going with my art school. And for a side job, I owned a produce market in Cocoa Beach, Florida also.
Getting back to the family origins.
Well,
there.
food, I've always kept the parallel.
I was going to ask, during your travels, were you learning or cooking along other people and trying to experience or pick up some of their skills?
I was always cooking. I picked up a lot of skills from the practical part of meeting people from all over the world and cooking what they're
And that's
cooking.
something I'd love to comment on. I think that's super important. You see how Mario even just said he purposely he traveled and met the director. He took every opportunity he could and tried to connect himself. And I think that's what's super important. And a lot of people nowadays don't do that. There's so many people around you in your life you're never going to see. So that one opportunity to network with them or just gain any little bit of knowledge from them is so huge.
Correct. And now people are, outside of the COVID, people are still kind of, we try and share knowledge. America now, the conglomeration of races in America are completely worldly, and in Chicago, completely worldly. So now the food has evolved from basic hamburgers, hot dogs, grilled cheese, stew, pot pies, American stuff, which is tradition, ham, steak,
Right.
and now you have sushi. Now you have Thai.
Fusion
Now you
dishes.
have fusion. You have now is as a chef now, and we'll get back to my cooking and what I do. But you want to know a little of my history. But now is the best time in America, the best time in the world, to learn from other people that are your neighbors, that when they close their door, he's a Filipino, he's making Philippine food.
Right.
When he's German, he
Everyone's
goes in
kind of an expert
and,
in something.
and does their kraut, does their Wiener Schnitzel, does their pasta. When I close my door, I go and I make lasagna, I make meatballs, I make homemade garlic bread, I make aglio olio, primavera, I make brujol, so people coming into my house, they would learn that. And when you go and you share, that's the greatest part about once this pandemic, hopefully the vaccine, and like I say, everyone take the vaccine. It's good for you. It's only going to help you come out of the closet and get back to reality if there's going to be. And then people can share the stuff that they know, the foods that they make, and they can share. You can go to someone's house and not feel like I got to be 6 feet away from you.
Yeah,
Or, oh my God, is COVID trailing them? Or did they just blow a fart and there's COVID on it?
That's true. So with your businesses, do you leave Florida, come back to Chicago, and start opening up restaurants?
So, all right, so go back to Florida,
Okay.
and I get a letter in the mail from the director of Kalani Hanua.
That's what I was saying. I knew he said it. He purposely said that he met with that connector. I knew that was going to lead to something.
Richard Koob, he's a director and a very well-known painter and, just an outstanding individual.
Is he still alive now?
Yeah, he's still alive. His family, he was an outcast. He was a commercial artist. His family owned farm implementation companies. They built farms, farm machinery. They made their millions and millions and millions. Richard was kind of a off the wall. They gave him $1 million. They said, "Here, just leave, just
Do
go,
your thing."
just go. Here's $1 million." So he went to Hawaii, bought this land, and built this cultural center. And it's been 30 years, still around. And I first was introduced in 1983. So I'm in Cocoa Beach. I get this letter. It says, "Dear Mario, hello, aloha, aloha. This is Richard Koob, Kalani Hanua. We really want you to come back to Hawaii, and we want you to come work with us at Kalani Hanua. And we would like you to be involved in our art productions." Because they did silkscreen, so, and me doing graphic artist and all this stuff, and painting and doing design, I could design, and we made screens. We made our own silk screens. And then the food, so I became the head chef at Kalani. But, so I'm in Florida, and all of a sudden, I'm thinking, maybe it's time to, the arts are running art schools, running education. Believe me, I starved. I might weigh 160 now. I weighed 124, 25.
Hard work and just.
Well, no money, no starving, just anything.
And do you think? I think that's something big. You were starving, but you were happy while you were doing that, correct?
Well,
that was what made it worth it.
Right. It's all right when you take on the life as an artist and that fine art. You're not at the top of the totem pole with your work. People aren't rushing out when they get paid to go buy a Mario original, to go buy a Chad original. Sure. They're not running. They're going to buy basic stuff, TP, clothing, food. Necessities. So the artist in America that isn't working a 9-to-5 job as a commercial artist downtown, now in computer designing, with computers have taken over, they've pushed the fine art out, although there is a renaissance coming back of fine art. They're rediscovering the fine arts. But unless you're in that fold, you're going to starve.
Sure.
And how are you going to pay rent? Right. How are you going to develop a family? How are you going to have $1 million?
Any of these other things we want to do with our lives.
Well, and was that, I think, for Chad, too? Like, was that a big...
That was a really big reason why I think I switched my major from opera to music business and going down the arts management route, was I saw that to really do this full-time, you have to be the 1%. And if that's not you, then you have to do other things with your life. And I realized, I came to that point where there's certain things that we do and we love that we can always do forever, and we don't need them to be our career. And there's certain things we can do and be passionate about that we can do for a career for the rest of our lives.
And I think sometimes when those things you love, you turn into a career, you tend to maybe walk away and not like it so much because you turned into that career. I think that would be true for some people, but.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Johnny is actually joining us now, so if you want to pull up a chair and sit next to Lil, they're going to actually talk through that, Mike. So where did we just leave off?
All right, so
You're now in art. What was your position there?
Okay, I'm now leaving Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Sure.
But in the interim period, I passed through Chicago to go work at my father's restaurant in downtown Chicago. He owned a famous corned beef eatery with a Jewish family. They were famous from 1933 to 1988. Wow. And basically, I went to work for him to get up some money to, when you're a starving artist, you don't have a lot of money. You're lucky you get from enough gas from one location to the next. Right. It's just the reality of the arts all over the planet. Sure. Okay? Like in Bali, when I was in Indonesia, I traded shirts with a collar that they never saw for amazing, original Balinese art.
Wow.
Hooded sweatshirts. Hoodies, Indonesia, never. This was 84, 85, 86. Wow. They had never seen a hoodie. And they were like, oh my God.
What made you go over there?
That's another good story. But So I leave Florida, come to Chicago,
Yep.
work at my father's restaurant in the Chicago Theater Building,
Wow.
right adjacent, a swinging
That's
door
a great spot.
into the theater. And, you never had to advertise, back to restaurant life.
And what year is this? This is in the
This
80s,
is
right?
80, this is 83,
Okay.
right? 82, 83.
Yeah.
And you never have to advertise when you're at State and Lake. The subway's coming up, the L's coming down, and there's 1 million people every day walking by food.
Marketing's not pretty hard when you're
No,
in that
my
spot.
father told me, he was a wise man, he died at 96. Salvatore Palaggi was pretty much the originator of the commercial Palaggi business in
96.
when he died.
great.
He died, but this was. He told me, he says, "Son, I haven't spent $1 advertising ever." He said, "Son, I have to push people out of here. They open at 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
There's 150 people in.
And they're doing
Doing
like lunch entrees. starting at
Bagels.
7.
They're doing breakfast.
Okay,
They're doing lunch. They're doing dinner. They have a bar. They're doing massive amounts of
So
corned
you're
beef.
getting.
What do you
like-
think was their average amount of money they were making per day? You think?
Well, let's see. Dad, they made so much money that they had to transport all the money from the first floor register to the third floor office in big shopping bags.
Holy shit.
And they
Crap.
would never count it until about a week and a half later. And every day they would just open the door 2 or 3 times and throw a shopping bag full of money, cash, into the office.
Was there credit card payments in the 80s?
No, there were no credit cards.
Were you a manager at the restaurant? Like
I was a
how long did it take before you were in a leadership role at the restaurant?
Well, right away, I was a night cook
Yeah.
and closing cook. So you're the night manager.
Nice. So you were
So-
closing up shop.
So I close at 1 a.m. every night, and you didn't close the restaurant until 1 a.m. 1:00. Now,
So you're cleaning up after
well, you're doing
one. So you don't.
no. You start cleaning at 1 o'clock. You start breaking down.
Okay.
So
yes.
my father had a video camera. He watched all of our movement. He had a PA system.
Nice.
When
PAs.
he'd say, "Son, don't even do that. Son, it's not 1 o'clock." And so, I mean, it's God's watching.
Yeah.
He knew, but that's how they ran the restaurant. And, to be successful, you have to have and back to the food service. So I'm working with him for about 7 or 8 months. I'm his night manager. I finally, the Kalani Hanua, they told me, "Hey, Mario, it's time, come on over. We want to get you broken into." I was the assistant director of the cultural center, chef, assistant director. And when the owner would go on worldly tours, which he did all the time because we did silkscreen. So he would go to China to buy silk. He would go to Bali to get prints. He would go all over the world, and he left me in charge.
Wow.
So I was in charge of the food, the bedding, the whole 9 yards. So I leave Florida. I work at my dad's restaurant in Chicago. I get on an airplane, no luggage, no suitcases. My beautiful, very expensive conga drums. I filled my drums full of all my belongings, my worldly
Nice.
belongings, put them in the cases.
Wow.
And my sister drove me to the airport. She says, "Mario, where's your luggage?" I said, "It's all, this is it." And my flute. And I land in Hilo, Hawaii. And my friends that had been from Florida lived there. They were contractors, so they came and picked me up.
Just knew someone everywhere.
Well,
Florida.
right. And so they took me to, they brought me to their home. But here's another unbelievable story. On the way from the airport in Hilo, I had, prior to leaving for Hawaii, I had watched Tarzan's movie, the Greystoke Tarzan movie. It was an English film of Tarzan. I saw it 3 times. So now I'm I'm in my 30s. I'm ready to I'm ready to go. I'm ready to hit the Tarzan mode.
Yep.
So they picked me up. Jan and Linda picked me up at the airport, and of course we indulged in some of the stuff from Hawaii, and we were driving down the lava road, and I said, Jan, Linda, stop. They said, Mario, what do you want? I said, stop. I'm going to go climb that coconut tree.
So you climbed that tree?
So they pulled over. I went and,
Did you grab
I
a
go,
coconut?
I had been watching Tarzan. I'm figuring this, this is,
This is your dream now.
This
You've
is-
been
yeah, and
fantasizing
so-
about it.
and so I figured I was going to do this right away anyway. But the crazy part is I had never climbed a coconut tree. And so all of a sudden they stopped. I go, coconut tree's probably 50, 75 feet high.
Holy cow.
And so I'm climbing it, climbing it. And as it's going up, the design of the tree is turning out. So all of a sudden your gravity
Is leaning down.
is now, gravity's trying to pull you out of the tree. And I'm continually, climbing, and I'm like 25, 30 feet up in the air. And all of a sudden, I couldn't do it anymore. And I lost all my strength in my arms. I lost my strength in my legs to hold on. And I told John, I says, John, I'm going to fall. You got to catch me. And John says, Mario, I can't catch you. I says, John, you got to catch me. I'm falling. And at that point, I fell 25 feet backwards, legs up in the air, arms up in
On
the
your
air.
back?
Well, yes, on my back, but what are the chances I would fall in a giant hole in the lava covered with tall Hawaiian grass? And yeah, I landed in Hawaii. They call a hole is called a puka. So I landed in a puka hole covered with tall Hawaiian grass.
So it saved your back.
Well, it saved my life, basically. But I'm stuck now. I'm stuck in this crevice and laughing like a hyena. And John says, Mario, why are you laughing? I says, John, I'm alive.
Yeah.
I'm alive. And back to my job, I was supposed to report that following Monday. I couldn't go to my new job for a month because I was in rehab, just getting rehabbed from, my crazy idea in Hawaii. So
And that's the first day you did that.
very first day on the Big
Oh my
Island
gosh.
in Hilo, Hawaii, on the way up to the lava area. Our place where I worked, I was 3 miles from the lava, 3 miles from the volcano.
And you said you saw it erupt.
Oh, many times.
Wow.
So part of my job was assistant director, which entailed I used to take people on excursions.
Okay.
I would take them to the ocean. I would take them to the side of the road where it was like a theater. You would look up and you could tell when the volcano's going to blow because the sky gets the biggest winter skies here.
Mm-hmm.
That's how gray,
It gets.
dark, black in Hawaii. It gets black like the biggest tornado you'll ever see, the biggest hurricane you'll ever see.
Does it happen immediately?
No. So what I would do is, people we slept 125 people a night here.
Wow.
So they would, I was in charge. I took them on a tour. I'd get them blankets, set them on the road and give them bottles of wine and whatever. And, everyone's buzzed out of their brain having a good time. And I would say, okay, in about 20 minutes, I want you to just look up that way. They call it Mauka. Up Mauka means up mountain in Hawaii. So I would say, now watch on the horizon. And all of a sudden, they'd be sitting there watching. And you'd see this glow like an electric oven coming on, like the filament of the electric, the element of the electric gets like bronze or red, goldish red. And it would just start to get brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. And all of a sudden you'd see a little flicker of a flame come up from the mountain. And that was the tip of the eruption beginning,
Holy cow.
the tip of the lava. And then you would see just all of a sudden it's 1,500 feet high.
And how many years did you live in Hawaii?
Only
in this
one.
role?
It was
Only
a one fast.
So what was the plan after that? Go back to the beef, or go back to working with Dad, or what was
It was basically back into
Chicago?
the restaurant industry.
And is this after this time? Is this when you start to do your international traveling, or?
Well, I mean, that was part of, once I left Hawaii, all right, but back to the volcano. So
Yeah.
people would just be in awe that but the volcano would be spitting out molten boulders the size of this house.
Wow.
And it would spit, like you've heard of all the hazmat caustic air that's been going on in Hawaii because of the volcano. So what would go on is, have you ever heard of the word, it's a mineral called mica?
No, I don't think I have.
Mica is a glass.
And
But
just
it's-
for size reference, this house is like 6,000, 7,000
Yes,
square feet.
So that's a very large
Very
lava
big
rock.
well, no, there were thousands of them coming out of it.
And you guys are just sitting next to them.
We're 3-4 miles away.
He said,
Okay.
yeah.
On the ocean,
Oh, okay.
just,
Yeah,
like going to a drive-in. That was the entertainment for.
That's so cool.
But what would happen the next day after the eruption, you walked around and you would find these shards or long, you know what angel hair pasta is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would find long angel hair fibers of mica, a mineral that is just like glass,
Whoa.
everywhere. Coating the road, you could go and sweep mica, and you could do.
Would that puncture tires?
No,
Could
but
you
it
make,
but
like-
it was bad for your breathing. Okay, that's why.
Could you breathe that in?
Oh, that's why people, that live on that side of the mountain. I mean, they just 3 years ago, I was doing my bucket trip list back to Hawaii. I did a bucket trip list in 2017, back to Colorado for 5 days. I did nothing but ride around the mountains where I had hung out. And so I was going to go back 2 years ago, and the lava blew, and it was off. The lava came. It transforms everything. It takes away beaches. Your favorite beach is gone. Your favorite spring that you love to hang out in. There was a place called the Queen's Bath on the Big Island and it was probably, got to be 100 feet deep of ice cold water. And people would go there, all the Hawaiians, and they'd hang out and they'd swim in their families on Sunday would go. The lava came down and gone.
Wow.
Queen's Bath filled in. It took our beach away. It made another beach 4 miles away from just, and that's the
That's
The
the power,
magnitude
yeah.
of that.
that's the way.
Mother Nature.
Well, Hawaii is all connected, underground, underwater.
Really.
All the islands are connected. Yeah, they're all connected by the volcano. And Hawaii at this point, if I'm not mistaken, is the only active Hawaii. The island of Hawaii is the only active volcano going on, and that's
In the chain of them. Yeah.
right. So I leave Hawaii. I do my stuff there, but I had been part of a world dance ensemble, part of the drummers of a famous African teacher, the godfather
What was
of
his name, if you don't mind?
Babatun Olatunji
Okay.
from Nigeria. He was the top.
He plays steel drums, right?
No. He plays the congas. He plays the
Congos. Okay,
African.
I've heard about him. in
The
my
African
choir class.
drum. He played a drum that was 5 feet high, 5 feet tall.
How'd you get connected to their band?
Well, so I'm the chef, artist in resident.
Right.
He comes. He's part of the International Dance Festival.
If you could talk more towards the microphone, actually.
He's part of the International Dance Festival that we were hosting. We were hosting people from all over the world and put on dances of their country.
Sure.
Okay, so there was the Hawaiian, there was the Japanese, there was, the Puerto Rican and the African, but he was the main guy on the marquee. So what he did is he would come and put on a performance, but he only brought 2 or 3 musicians with him because of the expense of traveling.
That makes
So
sense.
he said to me, he talked to Richard, and I had my congas there. I mean, the ones that are downstairs, they were, part of the ensemble. And
You became a hired gun for the night.
well, right. So Richard said, Mario, we got to get everyone on our side of the island or the big island. We got to get them together and put a band together for Babatun because he wants to choreograph African dance, but he needs the drummers. So one man down the road on the Red Road, his name was Reggae, and he owned a fruit drying company.
That's so cool.
He dried papaya, mango, lilikoi, he shipped it all over the world, but
Wow.
he had the dreads down to his
Hell yeah. Down
his
to the knees.
hip, down to his hip,
He was.
and he was an
And
incredible
what was his name again?
Reggae.
Shout out to Reggae.
Yeah, Reggae
Wow.
on the Big Island, and so
I would love to meet him.
we
I need
brought
to meet him.
we brought him in, and we brought all these other drummers that we all would get together and jam, regardless of who was there. We had our own, because we played for their classes. They put on classes. They had all kinds of stuff going on, and so we did this big performance. Babatun gets all of us together, and so now Babatun, we're going to put on a show. And at first he was teaching the dance, and he said to me, he says, Mario, come out. And he knew, I'm white as a mushroom, a white mushroom. And, basically I don't know how to African dance.
Sure.
Okay, I mean, so he showed everyone, he says, okay, Mario, do this. So I did this. He says, don't do that.
He was using you as an example for what not to do.
As what not to do. And everyone cracked up. And, so I kind of took it on the chin. But so we performed with Babatun. He got everyone together. He taught them the harvest dance. I mean, African music and African dance they're all basic African farmhand dances. They're all meant for harvest. They're all meant for sowing. They're all meant for harvesting. They're all meant for celebrating the African movement, and it's taken hold massive.
It's beautiful.
The hip hop dance now is
I'm sure
nothing.
you learned tremendous
just-
techniques about drumming from that guy.
Oh, unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, I
I
can't
mean,
even
Jim,
imagine.
to this day, when Jim invites me, I go out with him to some of his places where he gigs, and he says, yeah, come on up, Mario. And they're like, well, why did you bring this guy up for? Because I'll get crazy. I mean, Babatun was, but he had a drum, 2 drums, that one was 5 foot high,
Wow.
and it was probably 2.5 feet round, and it had all carved African faces in it. And wherever he went, he bought that drum a plane ticket. It sat next to him on the plane in his
Was
drum
it
bag.
the djembe?
No, this is the real deal. This is what, I mean, ancient Africa, the old world African, the African drumming was basically was a communication between villages. Okay, so they would and they would
It's like Morse
send
code.
they would send signals from village to village. I mean, it was and also part of their dance, but the drums weren't the modern drums that these were tiki drums. These were
Sure.
they had tiki faces carved, but not Hawaiian tiki. These
So
were
did you go
African.
on tour with him?
No. I stayed there, and he basically did his stuff. I was his private chef for 6 days.
Wow.
Every morning, I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning.
What was his favorite thing to eat?
Anything I would give him in the morning, because he was the first one that would get up And every morning in Hawaii, we were a natural resort. We had three 55,000-gallon tanks
Sure.
that were staggered going down like a hill, a terrace water collection system. So I was in charge of chlorinating this, making sure the pH was balanced, but we would bring that into the resort, and that was the water that ran through your sinks, your shower, you know, but you had to make sure.
You had minimal usage, right?
Well, we used a lot of it. It rained every day in Hawaii, like on that side of the island. That was
So the collection was filling up every day again.
yeah, but there were times where it would drought, and then, you know, you would have to really worry about it. But so every morning, the place was run on a generator the size of this room,
Wow.
a diesel generator from here to the window. And you'd go in and hit the switch, and it would go on, and all the power, wherever people had left it, their lights would go on, their music would go blaring at like 5 in the morning, their showers would go on. I mean, you know, so we would tell people, turn your lights off before you go to bed, turn your water off before you go to bed, you know, and lights out at 10 o'clock. So this was it. But Babatun would come in early in the morning and dressed in his regal African attire, like, you know, just like a prince from Africa. And he was the actual, if you look it up, Babatun Olatunji was part of the civil rights movement in America.
What was he prominent in?
He jammed at Martin Luther King's rallies.
Wow.
Okay,
Whoa.
so this goes back to, he was in Selma, he was in everywhere there was ever major stuff going on. He was the background. The African music was the music going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And Babatun he came from a very wealthy family. He gave up the wealth. He decided he wanted to be an artist.
Sure.
He wanted to share.
And express himself.
He wanted to share his country's families, the country, the Africa, the country. He wanted to share their music with the world.
Wow.
He brought African dance to America. He created all of the African dance schools in New York. He owned his own dance school in New York. He brought it, he traveled all over. I'll show you one day when Jim's here, we watched it. He opened for the Grateful Dead.
Oh,
Wait,
nice.
really?
Yeah,
I
in
love
either 1999, might have been 1999 in California for I think it was the new millennium when everyone thought the world was going to end.
Yeah.
So Babatun was the opening act. So he jammed with Santana. He played with.
Everyone. I mean, he was a predominant.
He was what it was. He brought the Afro music into America, and lo and behold, little did I ever know that. I mean, I knew he was well known and famous, but I didn't know of his magnitude. I didn't know how great he really was, and what he did, and he started all of these schools, and he died. Let's see, I believe he died in the early 2000s in New York.
Did he give you an inspiration, I guess, so leaving Hawaii, did he give you an inspiration, I guess after Hawaii, I would assume, where did you go to next?
I came back to call
Chicago.
it the mainland.
Yeah, the mainland, okay.
And, but he gave me a big shot in the arm. He vaccinated me with the real powerful, the African beat that isn't just your, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it's amazing the movement that, the drums really have an incredible power. I mean, drums are as primal scream as they're ever going to be. Drums will never leave the planet. The beat will never leave the planet. Now, look what's gone on because of this man coming to America. The whole America, the djembe, now after the drum circles. Drum circles were unheard of. Now this guy, I mean, everybody's drumming, everybody's into drumming, and this is, the African.
He brought a real revolution upon us.
Oh, big time. And I
Seriously.
can't speak enough about, how he influenced, the dance schools in New York. Alvin Ailey, I mean, the whole 9 yards, everybody who owned professional schools, they brought him in. He put African dance into America's ballet schools.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I want to get
He gave
into-
a way of life, really. I mean, if you look at A Human, he gave a whole different point of life. It gave an inspiration for people to look upon that. And I think it's so cool to see, as a person, you grow to figure out what's truly important to you. And for him, he was willing to give up that wealth from where he came from because he knew that was what he wanted to pursue. And I think that's super important for everyone. And I think you'll know as you get through your life what the right decisions will be to make. Would you say, like, what going through all of your opportunities and the things you grew through, it seems like that every opportunity that came in your way, you took. Do you have any
Well, I
regrets in life?
gravitated,
Like, do you?
Well, I earned millions of dollars in my life, and I've spent millions of dollars. My only regret is I didn't save a couple million.
Sure.
That's all. Other than that, no. I mean, in the restaurant business in Chicago,
Yeah, when you came back from Hawaii, did you open up your own restaurant at that point, or when
Pretty
was
much,
Like,
getting
when
into your
what,
career.
what
when's
inspired
your
that?
first restaurant?
All
When
right,
does the
so-
first Mario restaurant.
well,
open?
so what went on, the first real restaurant of mine was in Cocoa Beach, Florida. I did I made sandwiches for surfers. I made smoothies. The girl I lived with, the general's daughter, she owned a sprout farm. So that's when sprouts first came around. In the 70s, sprouts were big. I mean, people that didn't know what a sprout was, they, ooh, what is that? Oh, God, what is that? Oh, is it a worm? A mung bean sprout or, but sprouts this was all part of the changing of America's food, their recognition of
Yes.
another way to eat. And this was the counterculture moving through space.
Do you think there's other food things or ways we could live off the land that we aren't currently that will eventually come up in the future? Or do you think a lot of that has already, been discovered?
It's been discovered. Basically, are people taking the opportunity to get involved in it? That's where you miss the boat. Everything is here
Okay.
for you to be the healthiest person, your body, your mind, your heart, you as a person can be. It's all been done prior. I'm one of the forefathers of the movement of the sprouts, of the whole wheat stuff. I mean, my niece came down. I made her a whole wheat pizza in Cocoa Beach, Florida. She broke down starting to cry. Oh, God, look at that. What is that? Just they didn't understand it. To this day, when we all get together, the family, they talk about my niece, Mary, who just turned 50, about when Uncle Mario made a whole wheat crust pizza. In 1980, and they were having nervous breakdowns.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
so
I want to get into post 2000s. What's going on in your life as Mario? What are you getting into?
well, actually, right at this point, I have just from coming back into Chicago when I left Hawaii. I wanted to get back into society slowly.
Okay.
So I moved to Santa Cruz, California for a year.
That sounds beautiful.
And I lived and worked as a chef in an oceanfront restaurant on the wharf.
Is that where you made your Super de Mario?
Yes, that's where I was beginning to
To craft that
experiment.
recipe?
And
Could you share for some people who maybe don't understand what that dish is, what it is?
Well, zuppa in Italian means soup. Zuppa de mar means soup of the sea. I took a spin, zuppa de Mario, because I'm Mario,
Sure.
but it's soup of the sea. but my twist, and there is a twist with the Italians, that it's not just a soup, but you put a bed of pasta in the bowl.
Nice.
But you begin with olive oil, you begin with your clams, your mussels, your seafood, your shrimp, your calamari. I put in lake perch, cod, and you saute that up, and then you put in some clam juice.
Wow.
So you keep it's still the sea. You
Right.
get what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
still, it's a broth of the sea. And then it's becoming soupy like, but I throw then like 6 or 8 ounces of my family's famous secret red sauce
Wow.
into that. So right now it's really looking like soup.
I don't like seafood. I'm not a seafood fan, but that kind of
Well-
makes me like want to.
Well, for some, I mean, seafood is almost something that you love it or you hate it. It's like mushrooms. You either love them or you hate them.
and you don't think that's something that changed throughout your life?
Oh,
You
it
kinda-
changed for me. I didn't like mushrooms, but then when I went to college and became an adult, I like them a lot now.
Right. I mean, and the portobello has revolutionized people liking a mushroom. You can char grill portobello mushrooms, and it turns into almost like a piece of meat.
Yeah.
You know, people put it on the sandwiches now. They put blue cheese over it. They put mozzarella over it. They charbroil the hell out of it. I make phenomenal portobello mushroom sandwiches, and you can put a nice steak over that, and food has evolved a million times
Sure.
in America. Food now is the most creative it has ever been in the time of America, in the world. But in America, there's more international food being invented or exposed. People are trying, the creative chef is running rampant now. So we'll get back to my
you're in
journey.
California.
I'm in California. I'm working in a seafood restaurant on the wharf. And I moved back to the Midwest, and a friend of mine's opening a bar, an Irish bar on the south side of Chicago.
That sounds good.
This is 1986, something like that. And so he says, Mario, I need it's called Carrie's Beverly Bar and Grill. He's a Chicago fireman. And he wants me to come and put the food into it. So it's called Carrie's Beverly Bar and Grill. It's in Western, the South Side Parade,
Nice.
right in the heart of it. That's
Great
where
location.
that's where the South Side is. South Side Irish. That's one of them.
St. Patrick's Day around there
Right.
is something special.
And I've cooked for all the chair people of the St. Patty's Day. I mean, in the 2007, 8, when I really moved back to the South Side. But in 1986, 87, I helped him open his place. And it was Carrie's Beverly Bar and Grill, food by Mario Joseph Palaggi. That's my middle name. So here I got all these Irish people coming in, and all they wanted was French fries.
And you're like, I'm trying to do
Maybe
good cuisine.
Maybe a burger.
Maybe.
Maybe a burger, but mostly French
Would you
fries.
say their favorite vegetables was sausage?
Sausage, yeah, like Jim Statler. God bless Jim.
Let me guess, they liked whiskey as a drink.
Oh my God. I mean, the South Side. So I'm there, and I'm in the back, and I have my cuisine that I'm trying to promote, and they're not going for any of the menu items, and so I leave there. I get a job as a Brown's chicken manager. For a year, I was hired by.
Brown's Chicken, there's one in Aurora, I still believe, right?
I was hired by Mr. Brown and Portillo.
Mr. Portillo.
They are together. Brown Portillo. They're the same family. They're the same. Okay, so I get hired by Mr. Brown, and in Chicago Heights. I'm living on the South Side. I'm living on a 40-acre farm in Moni, or Frankfurt, rural
I know
district
the
of
area.
Frankfurt.
Yep.
I know that.
And they trained me in Glen Ellen. I didn't know where the hell
Oh
was Glen
damn, that's a
Ellen.
hike.
Well, for training, right.
Yeah.
So now I'm the manager at Brown's Chicken. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't know about this. I said to the owner, I said, I'm the manager. Who's the cook? And he looks at me, he says, you are. I said, I thought I was a manager. He says, you are. But you're the chicken cook. You cook all the chicken, and you manage all the employees, and you manage the safe,
What?
and you manage the books. And the only thing I didn't do was bread the chicken. We had a professional breader that all day long,
that's good at least.
he looked like you would have loved
What
it.
does it take to be a professional breader?
You get covered in egg and batter and breading. It comes out of your eyeballs. It comes out of your ears. It is in your neck. It's in your face. You walk out.
It's your
Lil,
life.
you would love it, Lil. You look like the doughboy. I mean, it's nothing. The doughboy's got like a tuxedo on compared to what a breader, and that's all they do, 8 hours a day.
Wow.
They take raw chicken, they rinse it, they batter it, they bread it. We call it dusting, and then they bring it to me in baskets. In my job, I couldn't believe it. I had 8 deep fryers.
Is that a lot to manage for one person?
That's ridiculous to manage for one person to cook all the chicken. And there's a procedure cooking chicken. If you don't watch chicken, you'll burn it. But most of all, when you have 5 whole chickens in a basket, if you don't separate it after 3 minutes, it all sticks together, and it's one big clump of chicken stuck together. So
because
stuck
of the flour.
stuck together.
So that's 40 chickens with the 8 baskets you're dealing with.
But
every
if
round.
if you do it too soon, all the breading falls off, and you got a naked chicken in the deep fryer, and all the breading's boiling away. So now you got 8. You got, let's see, 1, 2. There were
40
two baskets in each. 2 baskets in each deep fryer. So you have 16 baskets of chicken going on busy days. And I'm in charge of this, and I'm like, man, this is insane. And then you got to listen to people, oh God, my chicken wasn't done properly, and then I got to go out and talk to them while the chicken's burning or sticking, or so. I mean, it's back to the food service industry. And, whoever out there that is thinking of going in the restaurants, work in the restaurant in the beginning stages, go in as a dishwasher, go in, learn every station, and understand everything you need to know about that business, and then learn how to manage it. And then if you're going to manage it, then learn how to own it, because then you're going to have to manage it. And you're going to have to, when no one shows up, when your breader isn't there, you got to bread it. When your cook isn't there, you got to cook it. And, but back.
Taught you a lot of great skills.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and it, it drove
Hard
me
way.
insane, and, basically a lot of stress, a lot of years of feeling doom and gloom, and, after.
Sorry to interrupt there, but do you think, like, with restaurants nowadays, you see a lot of these restaurants where it's more of just a name and a community and feel rather than focused on the actual food? Like, I feel like when I go to a local diner here in Yorkville, right, it's not like it's the best plate of food I've ever had. I feel like there's not real soul or purpose behind the actual cooking. And would you consider, if a restaurant's not focused on that, would you say, if you're a restaurant owner, should you be mainly focused on your food, or is it as much as it's more important
your
about
food,
the experience?
the product has to be the product. I mean, you can't just open a restaurant and have junk and manage a junk restaurant.
Yeah.
Even though
I feel like we see so many of those still, though. I feel like there are a lot of junk
yeah.
restaurants,
No, I think that's something that's that we could talk about. Like COVID has really made it so that way restaurants are either you care about this, you're passionate about it, and you're gonna try and succeed through this time, or maybe it's not cut out for you.
Like, I
because-
guess what I mean by that is, you know, you see small little franchise. You open your one shop, but you're getting the regular food from GFS, and
Well,
you're
it's just-
having a cooker just put in a fryer or something. Make it really simple. I feel like there's not lots of passion and love behind that, but we call that a restaurant.
Sure.
I think
And I
people-
think there's a reason why so many restaurants, they want to grow, or these operators, right? The reason why they're not able to grow is because there's no really true passion or recipe behind that. I think you're better off, like, I think, having 2 really good dishes than 20 dishes where one of them tastes okay.
Yeah, I'm very curious to find out when Mario gets back here. I wanted to ask and see what your perspective on 9/11 was, where you were at. How did that affect you? Did you see that take an effect on the restaurant industry? Other things like that.
Well, 9/11, I had left. All right, so if we fast forward, get out of the Brown's Chicken, then I moved back to the immediate south side where my family's at from Beverly. My father, we retired him at 88, and I brought him back out of retirement at 90. So he went from 90 to 96 as a ma and pa, son and father restaurant, Palaggi's. So fast forward, that's 6 years in Beverly. I had a BYOB there. Fast forward, I was tired of not making money off liquor, so I moved downtown. 2000, I run into some friends of my brothers, and they have millions of dollars.
Nice.
They're,
What is their industry, if you don't mind me
they
asking?
own marble companies
Got it.
and brick building companies. When marble, they
And brick was
did they
huge.
did all the fascia of all the downtown buildings in Chicago. Okay, so they did the insurance, the Aon, all the big white one, the beautiful,
Yeah.
all this stuff. So they wanted to spend their money. They wanted a tax shelter. Okay, so there's a lot of people that go in. If you want to lose money,
Restaurant business is a good place to be.
open a restaurant.
especially now.
And yeah,
Well,
that's
or
something-
any time if you just wanna, I mean,
Sure.
because you don't. So it's 2000. We're building our restaurant out.
And are you downtown in the Loop?
I'm in the heart of what is now called River North.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
exactly
at
the
10
area.
West Hubbard. I'm a pioneer there. Myself, Richie Melman, Shaw's Crab House is there. Vong's Thai Kitchen will let us entertain you. Mother Hubbard's Bar. O'Callahan's an Irish bar. Ruth Chris, an establishment from the Carolinas. And Sullivan's Steakhouse. That's it. I was a newcomer on the block. I went into a Spanish tapas restaurant that had built out to the tune of $3 million, and they folded in 9 months. We took on something that had been built out. This was 2000. My investors, Daddy Warbucks and everybody, they said, Mario, we don't like this decor. We're going to change it. So I was like the contractor. So now we're going to keep this, keep that. We're going to paint the place and open in 2 months. They came in, they said that we had an Irish, one of my guys, a serious Irish guy. Well, Mario, the paint here, we got a pink restaurant. We can't have a pink restaurant. Go back in the kitchen. So he sent me back in the kitchen, and they hired a restaurant designer. $65,000 just for his information.
Holy cow.
He didn't put a nail in, he didn't do a drywall. 65 grand for his drawing. $870,000 to build out his ideas. So now rather than 2 months, now it's 7 months later. And we open August of 2001, a month before 9/11.
Wow.
So we had
Wow.
we had a Palaggi restaurant.
You're opening a month before 9/11.
Yeah, we had a Palaggi rest. Back to your question.
Yeah,
You know,
this is perfect
we had a
timing.
Palaggi restaurant, you know, in Chicago, Italian food, all this blah, blah, blah. And so they insisted that we have, you know, no TVs. All we had
Intimate
jazz,
dining
jazz
experience,
music, cabaret,
bringing it back to that classic
a
feel
woman
almost.
seated on a piano in a gown singing,
That's classy.
you know, jazz and
What
you
was
know,
the name of the restaurant?
Palaggi's.
Palaggi.
My name is the second of within 10 years, and so I'm there. We're no TV. Didn't know what the heck was going on. I get a call from my sister on September 11th, 2001. She says, Mario, there's been 2 airplanes just hit the Twin Towers in New York, and I'm, you know, I got beef blood all over me and chicken juice and pasta and rigatoni,
You're in the
ravioli.
mindset.
I mean, you know, I'm like, oh yeah, two little Piper Cubs, you know, like small little single engine planes with 4 people in it. And she says, Mario, go find the TV. So I went to the Marriott Garden down on State and Hubbard, and I walked into the bar, and they had it on TV, and I saw 2 airliners, massive airliners, blowing into the Twin Towers. And then I saw the
Did you close that day?
twin towers start to crumble. And I went back out, and on the street at State and Hubbard, you're only about 2 blocks from Marina Towers. You're only 2 blocks from the Chicago River. You're only about 3 blocks from the heart of downtown. Okay, so all of a sudden, I'm standing on the corner at State and Hubbard. I see probably 200,000 to 300,000 people walking over the bridge, leaving Exodus out of downtown. Buses are packed, no cabs,
Holy
just
shit.
walking, leaving downtown.
Holy crap.
They had found some evidence that the Sears Tower or some other, everybody, this big thing was, you know, a no-fly zone. Terrorists were just going to destroy Chicago. Everybody left Chicago.
Did you leave the city too?
No, I stayed. I lived downtown.
Yeah.
I lived at 405 North Wabash. I saw the Trump Tower crack the ground, begin the Trump Tower.
Wow.
I saw it finish. It was my next door neighbor. I would sleep and my building would shake. I was in a 62-story building, and Trump was putting caissons 14 stories into the ground to make sure the Trump Tower. So long story short, I'm on the 17th floor, and I'd wake up in the morning and look down the river thinking there's going to be an airliner. Okay, this was how paranoid. I mean, you asked about 911, and so all of a sudden there's a no-fly zone. So we had a good business going. I mean, we had, you know,
The crazy thing too is I would be terrified. O'Hare is so close to the city. Right?
well,
So, like,
and that's so there was no airplanes were taking off or landing. It was no fly, nothing. So what you're asking me, did I leave? No, I kept my doors open. And all my customers that had been my customers as tourists and out-of-town businessmen for a whole week, they came and we became like a family. We were like the 911 family. Every day they come in at 11 o'clock, have lunch, drink wine, eat pasta. They'd stick around. We'd have the music playing. And then all of a sudden they lifted you could fly, the airport's open.
gone.
But no one came downtown then. Downtown became a ghost town. Desolate. Restaurants, they laid off 5,700 hospitality
Huge
workers.
recession in the restaurant
Wow.
industry.
Oh, hotels, everything. No one wanted
What
it.
year is that?
2001,
That's
yeah,
done.
that
So we're
was
seeing
911.
Damn.
That 911 created
How
like
long did that recession, would you say, last? Or
a year. It was a good year
before anyone
to a
felt
year and a
comfortable?
Did you guys
half
have to shut down?
before people felt comfy to come back. But who was really making the money was the small little suburbs, the small little mom and pop places, the small little places that weren't in the big tourist area where people would feel if you're, because what they were doing is, I mean, they blew up New York. I mean, they destroyed Bin Laden. He destroyed our economy for quite a while. He went for the heart of America, our commercial, our business sector, and he hit it home.
I mean, yeah, everyone calls New York the center of the world.
Right, but every city, Chicago is probably the second or third biggest in the United States, and no one was coming down. So
do you think people as a whole and as a humanity were coming together in those moments? Do you think that was the biggest unity you've seen in a long time as people and humankind in the U.S.? Or
in the beginning, it was total fear.
Okay. Was there a turning point?
Everybody was hiding out. Everybody downtown. We were skyrocketing our restaurant, Palaggi's restaurant. I was skyrocketing my menu, I was part of the American Cancer Society. I did all kinds of, Chicago Business Association. I mean, I did all kinds of stuff. We took it out an ad in a Chicago magazine. It cost $36,000 for one page.
Holy cow.
That's how big. We were on the books on the airplanes.
Yeah.
You open up, you saw Chef Mario Palaggi in the books you'd see in Chicago, the business.
No way.
Yeah, and then it just then everybody, if you didn't have big pockets, deep pockets, like some of the franchise people, if the steak people, the Sullivans, we were new. We were the new kid on the block.
Right.
We started to pull out $40,000 a month cash out of the investors' savings to make ends meet. Our bills every month, the first of the month to the 15th, I had to have $80,000 cash to give away.
Every month?
Every month. The first of every month for almost 3 years. And after a while, because of that...
It's just not sustainable.
Well, it's you asked about 911.
Yeah.
What was it like? It devastated a lot of small businesses like the COVID is doing now.
Right.
Parallel COVID, and if you don't have massive amounts of money, if you're not McDonald's, if you're not Burger King, if you're not Wendy's, I mean, those guys, they're up 35%
Right, yeah, they're
from
doing
2019.
Right now.
While everyone else that has a sit down, even the biggies that have the sit down are dying.
It's interesting seeing the dichotomy just between how all these really big restaurants now, the ones that were always changed, the ones that were always doing well, are accelerating during this time. And the people, all the smaller business are just completely, falling off.
It is, I wouldn't go and say that. I would say that it depends on your menu, depends on your selection of foods, and depends on your seating.
What about
How are you a fast food? Do you have an incredible delivery? If you don't have an incredible delivery, and your Richie Melman is massive.
So
Lettuce
basically what
centers.
I'm getting from that is if you're a smart business owner, a smart restaurant owner, getting through something like this, if you were to be changing and keeping up with the current times you're in, adapting to those changes, you could still make it if you were to be smart.
You have to, first of all, stop everything and redesign your food service, redesign your carryout. Sit down is not happening now. And they were thinking, every morning I get up at 5:30, I know more news than the newsmen because I watch them all. I read all my news stuff, the Washington papers on my phone. I read all about the industry. I learn all about the world, COVID, what's closed. Italy is shut down. I mean, they were hit the worst in the beginning.
Sure.
But back to Chicago, and if you don't have something that is in a hurry out the door,
Yeah.
even the biggest sit-down fine dining, back to your question and statement, the fine dining establishments are being crushed. The atmosphere that America loves, to sit at a table, have a beautiful napkin, have a beautiful crystal, have beautiful everything in front of you, is right now, it's not happening. Okay, everyone is scrambling because you're not allowed to have more than 6 people or 8 people at a table, and that has to be 6 feet apart. In my business, where I was the chef, where it says the Red Palm, 5 years I was a banquet chef there in Evergreen Park. July, the owner called me and said, we can't do banquets anymore. We can't make any money. And so a lot of places are biting the dust. Richie Melman, Lettuce Entertainment.
And they're having to raise their prices, right? I mean, because even supply and these food supplies are increasing. The costs are being increased because the demands or not the demand, but the
Just the processes they have to put in place in order to get the shipping
Right,
done
so then-
in COVID standards.
It all depends on your menu.
okay.
If you're still fast food, you're making so much money so fast. It's like my father with bags of money.
So what's a profit margin for a fast food restaurant comparative to a sit-down restaurant?
You probably make 35 to 40% more, I would say, in fast food.
Okay.
At
than a
this moment
sit-down.
or always?
Pretty much always.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what you have going. I mean, there was a restaurant, when I was downtown, it was the heyday in the early 2000s. All the 2000s were, once 911 left, it got back to it, But listen to this one, back to your question about 911, how did it change food, okay? So the 90s, we had this thing going on in America's culinary movement of concentrated foams, okay, condensed foods, aerosol, basil. I mean, just a whole bunch of small little Frenchy almost, small amounts, giant platter, raise it with derivatives of foam, flavored, basil, whatever. That was what was going on in America. And that was like, the Iron Chef and all this stuff came from a lot of that. There was, the chef movement was happening in the 90s. 911 comes, boom, blows that out the door. All of a sudden, what's now happening?
Yeah, what's in?
Mac and cheese,
Comfort food.
chicken
He said it there. Yeah.
chicken
is-
wings, pot roast,
Burger.
mashed potatoes,
Wow.
the bacon movement.
Pancakes.
I would say that's just still as much of a presence nowadays than
But back in the 90s, there was a movement, okay? When you'd go to a food show at the Navy Pier, there would be chefs behind the glass, and they'd have a big ceramic platter like that, big 18 inches. They'd have food that much, and they'd have a sprig.
Very bougie, very elegant.
Well, Frenchy almost.
Yeah.
A sprig, and then on top of the sprig, they put a foam, and then on top of that, and they were being judged for all this stuff. 911 pretty much, it derailed a lot of the fancier food, and people hid. They took back into their homes, and they started to cook themselves. They started to go.
And also at the same time, we start to see the rise of TV and the cooking network and chefs wanting to show others how they can do it in their own home.
Right.
Like you're saying, that push towards the residential cook or the in-home cook.
Right.
The
Now,
to make all the experience at home.
I feel like
Just
this.
see.
And I feel like in this day and age, that's only been
It's
accelerated
growing
even more.
Right.
COVID is pushing us more in the home.
So like, see, and that's why home remedy companies are so important. Everyone wants everything in their fingertips, and if we can make it at such a cheap ratio to have it in your home, it could be such a minimal cost. Everyone would rather prefer it in their homes.
I feel like something that I'm seeing in this day and age is like personal brands are becoming more and more stronger for each individual chef. Whereas like before the internet had to come into play, like your like way to get in was a restaurant. But now you can show, like, if you have
can
a
become
good
a
enough
famous chef
brand,
on YouTube.
yeah, or anything
On Instagram, I mean,
Literally anywhere.
I'm pretty well known, and I have
Yeah,
a lot of
if you want to
followers
plug
and-
your Instagram, actually, what the name of it is?
Just Chef Mario.
Yeah, if you guys
Palaggi.
want to follow him, see a little bit about his life, you can follow him there.
You can see my library of. All I do is post food I've made.
Yeah,
You know,
it's a great channel.
I
It's a
mean,
great
every now
content.
and then I put a little bit of the weird Uncle
A little bit
Mario
of
on the
artistic
beach, and,
Uncle
you
Mario.
know, painting on the beach in Mexico, or dressed in my my sombrero or whatever. But food has morphed with 911. It morphed into a whole nother comfort regime, and now ma and pa and individual chefs are becoming well known. You got Emerald pops up, all these other chefs pop up.
I even see subscription-based food plans like HelloFresh and like what
Right,
you're doing.
right.
That's the new frontier.
Well, what I'm doing for this family here, the Statlers, I prepare a heart-healthy meals.
Have you thought about expanding anywhere
Well, I
else
am. I mean,
in Illinois?
I have another client
me.
over
and
here,
potentially another one too.
and then
would
I
do.
started another client in Chicago. But I'm
Would
low
you
key.
take on, if people hear this, and a lot of our people that listen to us are in the Illinois area, if anyone heard this and was looking to get in on Meals on Wheels, is that something they could do?
We would have to have a meeting and deliberate.
It's very
about,
personalized.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's a custom.
because I'm not just slapping food together.
Right.
My whole deal now is to give you the healthiest food I have learned to prepare, and
Yeah.
I've cooked everything that could kill you and clog every artery that you even own.
Right.
But I don't cook that food anymore, and I've refined it, and now there's a need. Our world is dying in front of us from the food that we eat.
Yeah.
It's
Past overdue that we switch.
well,
we-
and there is a movement. God bless the young. The younger people are taking the ball,
It's true.
and they're making the healthy foods now. They're taking this out of this. They're taking the pig fat out of the pig, and somehow still giving you the bacon. And I mean, seriously. And so now's the best time for eating healthy food. There are so many different ways to eat healthy food now because it's all been done. Me being a grandfather of the holistic movement, back to the general's daughter in New Mexico.
Yeah.
She was a holistic healer. She had her license as a naturopathic doctor. She did the Bach flower remedies that were, now
This
people.
is probably right at the break of this type of holistic medicine in the United States.
This is when we were witch doctors. We were.
Sure. People were like, "What is this?"
Uncle Mario, you're a vegetarian. My aunts, all my big Italian relatives, what?
Confused.
No meatballs? What? No Italian sausage? What? No brajol? I said,
Yeah.
listen, you're going to be dead. You're going to die. And so this was part of the movement I was in. We were the forefathers of the sprouts, the hummus. I made my own hummus in 1979 out of garbanzo beans. I made my own tofu. I fed the surfer sandwiches, falafel. Homemade while they were surfing. But this was looking at how things. There was a point where what we have now that you all know of as healthy foods was never here in America. Never, ever, ever.
That's wild.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, a little change.
Sure.
What did people in America? Oh yeah, let's go have Chinese food. You know, that was the extent. Or we'll get pizza.
Yeah.
The Irish people have pizza, or they get Chinese food, and that's their international.
I feel like it's the same
That's
things I
international
eat.
cuisine.
You know, that's the international cuisine.
Well, I think this is one of the big things I would love to touch on. I think this as an entrepreneur in ways of investing, I think I would never personally want to get into the food business. But if there is one opportunity, I was driving in Peoria, and, you know, everywhere you drive around, right? These small communities, you look at all these awful fast food options, right? But there's nothing that's a healthy option that's just as quick. And everyone's so sufficient. So this is a big area. If I were ever to invest into the food business, I would invest into something
McDonald's
to make
healthy.
it convenience. Everything is a convenience. And I think this is a big thing that needs to be taken. But one other point before maybe we could talk more about that is I was also driving through Peoria, and we were driving by Al Capone's house. And I believe your family, I heard a little bit, may have any reference or connection to Al Capone, or your mother or your grandmother?
My family, we were in the restaurant and jukebox business, and we occupied buildings in the red light district, which is where Al Capone had the Allerton Hotel at Cermak in Michigan. And yes, I mean, my family knew Al Capone. My grandmother, word has it that she used to make bathtub gin with Al Capone. And Grandpa Giuseppe Palaggi left Grandma in the Prairie Street and just in the South Loop and moved because Grandpa says, I don't want to get deported. No, seriously, because that's what was going on.
Oh.
I mean, Italy, the Italians came over. We were considered scums of the earth, like the Irish need not apply. The 1860s, the 1850s.
Yeah, no, there was racial, like, it's crazy. Like, even at that time, like, it's the same way it is now, or it was, at least in the early 2000s and the 90s, with Hispanic and African American, you know, migrants that were moving in, is that there used to be that same sort of prejudice towards people moving from Eastern European countries.
And you're right. And the British, the English, the Irish need not apply. I mean, what it was is the Baptist, the Lutheran, the German Lutheran, they ran the textile, they ran the stockyards. The big industries were run by people that employed slave labor, unbelievable conditions in, like, Chicago's meatpacking industry. We were the south side of Chicago was the major meatpacking industry of America. It was networked from all the trains that come through from the west, from the Midwest, from the north, from the south, and everything. Then they got refrigerated and trucks and refrigerated train cars, and it revolutionized. But Chicago, the meatpacking industry, the stockyard, Chicago Stockyards, is located at about 47th to probably 42nd or 41st in Halsted. They were millions of people that came in the 1860s, and they were there processing cattle in the gut trucks, killing the slaughterhouses, and you got paid maybe 20 cents an hour, 30 cents an hour. But the Irish were hated. And the Germans had their own bars. If you were an Irishman, they called the Irish, they were shenanigans. They didn't like the Irish. They thought they were just all about foolery and mischief. But if you were an Irishman and you wandered in on a Friday night after getting paid, and you wandered into Germantown, there were murderers all the time. People were getting murdered and thrown out on the streets, and just, you know, Chicago was a very seriously racially divided
place to be.
the Protestant, they owned everything.
I wanted to give you a chance. We've been rolling for almost 3 hours now. I want to maybe sort of wrap us up and close us in here. I want to give you a chance for our generation and the generations that are younger than us. If they hear this, what is the wisdom that you'd want to leave them?
Yeah,
or
if you give
impart
them
for
one piece of advice from growing up at the age of, let's say they're 16 right now, what piece of wisdom and advice would you
from
give?
your time on this earth would you give them?
I would learn how to work with your hands, learn how to be athletic, stay in shape, eat really good food that's all around, and be wise with what you choose for your career. And research it, and if you're going to do it, make sure you come in at the baseline and learn it in the beginning, and where the first early stages, all the way through whatever steps, whatever procedures there are to you getting $1 in your hand at 6 to 7 hours later, whatever, know it inside and out, and treat your employees fair, and be kind, be firm, and learn how to work hard, and keep your head down, and don't complain a lot because you've gotten yourself into it. And if that's what, it's not easy, but it will pay off when if you do all of those steps and you learn and you research what it's about, and now you have everything at your disposal. You can research anything. For me, like a caveman, I go on YouTube, I can't believe it. I tell Siri, how many calories are there in a piece of chicken? 371.
Now Apple's excited they can
Yeah,
listen in.
I mean, seriously, Siri, and, I'll say how many calories are there in 4 ounces of broccoli? 81. So what I'm saying is now be wise, do your research, and try a lot of things.
What about our audience in the 30 to 50-year-old range? Maybe the people that, 30-year-old Mario was falling off a tree in Hawaii. What about the person that's in between the age of 30 and 50, the ones that are maybe losing hope or don't have guidance or feel like there's not much direction? What guidance would you give them at that point in your life?
I would check your diet, check how you're eating, check yourself out, check your physique, check your body out, are you healthy? Are you feeling good? Are you eating right? Because if you're not, if you're having all of these physical ailments that from 30 to 50 are going to kill you and will eventually, if you don't watch it and keep yourself together, do whatever you want to do to make your money, but at the same time, make sure you, take good care of yourself, because longevity is inevitably what we're all hopefully hoping for.
Right.
And longevity they're proving that certain things are hereditary, but a lot of it is how you go about your habits and what you do to yourself, and basically,
I remember he said also, save a little bit more money. That was the one thing.
Right. I mean, back to money, yes. I mean, but you have to make sure you have, a good job that you like. Make sure you like it, and save money. Don't squander, and that's
One last question, I would like to figure out, I think, just
that's
one,
all, folks.
Hey, I want to thank you, Mario, for being on, and it's been a really, really, really interesting and
I
great
really wanna
Been
ask
a
this
really,
question.
really, really long time to listen.
I want to ask this question. Would we see in the future Mario ever coming back into the restaurant business? If the right opportunity were to present you,
Well,
would you ever jump back in?
there's a secret movement going on in Kendall County that I have to tell you about, but I can't tell you anymore.
Sure.
All right. Well,
All right.
thank you, Mario. We
That
appreciate
wraps
you
us
being
up here on A Humanistic Perspective podcast. Make sure to check in with us on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays on all your favorite streaming platforms to hear some more of our content, and check us on out. Peace, folks.
Peace.
Peace.
Woo!